Today, we're going to be taking a look at the craziest FNAF games of all time, from super cool to super weird, and all of the games in today's video are ones you're not going to want to miss. The FNAF Fanverse Initiative, an idea Scott Cawthon had that was so good. The ability to bring fan game devs of your games into a closer community and allow them to sell merchandise based off of your branding is an amazingly generous and incredible opportunity. Having amazing games come out of it, such as Joy of Creation, Five Nights at Candy's, and Pop Goes, each of these creators are very passionate in what they do, and it shows. Another game to come out of the Fanverse is One Night at Flumpty's 3, the third game in an incredibly designed series. But as something that has become all too familiar with FNAF fan games, as previously seen in games like Graveyard Shift at Freddy's and Dormitabus, the creators' morals and ethics of said games can be called into question. And sadly, the creator of this game, Jonachrome, had his turn on the chopping block that is the internet. Today, I'll be diving into Jonachrome's fantastic FNAF fan game series, all the goods, all the bads, and the disturbing accusations that had the light shined on them for all the public to see. Come with me as we explore the masterpiece of a FNAF game created by a deviant. One Night at Flumpty's 1 is what you'd expect from an old FNAF fan game. It's pretty much just a recreation of FNAF 1, but this game did it differently. Something I think a lot of people could agree with me on is that One Night at Flumpty's was ahead of its time. No other FNAF fan game was as well put together as Flumpty's was. You could argue Five Nights at Candy's was, but I'm not talking about Candy's right now, am I? As the title suggests, this game only features one night, but don't let that make you think it'll be a cakewalk. This one night is up there in difficulty with nights 5 and 6s from the normal FNAF games, and the difficulty increases by the hour instead of the day. Before I dive into gameplay, however, I want to talk about how amazing this game really looks. There's a lot to be said about Jonachrome, and I'll be diving more into his character at the end of the video. But Jonachrome is an artist, and a damn good one at that. Every single location in this game has so much character put into it, especially the office. Sure, there's a lot of dead things, but ignore what it is for a second and just admire how well done the 2D art in this game really is. Not many FNAF games go for a 2D approach, and I really wish more did because I think it looks amazing. Look at Playtime with Percy for another example. That game is 2D and it looks incredible. Then look at another completely flawless and probably the best FNAF game ever designed with zero competition, FNAF Shitpost. Another game with 2D art that is fantastic, and I definitely have no bias over that game at all. This game did something no other was doing at the time, and it has aged like a fine wine. But now, let's jump butthole first into the gameplay. As mentioned already, this game only has one night. But dear God, it's a long one. Each hour of this night is a minute and a half, making the full night 9 minutes long, which is a crazy amount of time for a FNAF game where you need to have good nerve control. Just like FNAF 1, you have a power system. However, it's only affected by your doors, so feel free to camp the cameras as much as you'd like without the worry of draining your power, which I promise you'll be doing often, as this game is going to rail you in the asshole with encounters, and you'll have to stay on top of each character's location. Speaking of the characters, who are they? Nice segue, Dxtr. Thanks, Dxtr. The first guy we'll talk about is obviously Flumpty, the main attraction. Flumpty acts both as the Freddy of this game and the phone guy. At the beginning of the night, he tells you that his name is Flumpty and that he is immune to the plot and can transcend space and time. He goes on to tell you that he kidnapped you and brought you here to be friends and that he's coming after you. And coming after you, he is. Holy shit. This guy moves at the speed of sound. Flumpty moves randomly across cameras with no pattern, and he can teleport wherever and whenever he likes. Which means, if you're unlucky like me, he can get to your office in about 15 fucking seconds after the night starts. That's awesome. I'm in for a shitty time, aren't I? I'm covering 3 games in this video? Can I get that confirmed? Can I? Hey, can you confirm that? Uh-huh. Yeah? Yeah, alright, fuck me. 3 games in the first 15 seconds already has me stressing. I love this. If you're unable to see Flumpty on any of the cameras, that means one of 2 things. Either 1, he's on the broken camera, which I'll talk about later, or 2, he's at your left door. If he's at your left door, just close it and bada bing bada boom, he can't get in. But something you'll immediately notice is that, unlike FNAF 1, there's no windows. so you won't be able to tell when he's left by just sitting in your office. So you'll have to constantly be checking the cameras to see where he is. And when he moves as fast as he does, it can get overwhelming quickly. Let's talk about our next freak, birthday boy Blam, or just Blam as I'll be calling him. Blam works very similarly to Flumpty, except he attacks the right door and he can't teleport like a dick. He follows a set path to your right door. Just close it, watch the cameras to see when he leaves. I just queefed. That's all you have to do about him. Oh, and in case you were curious, he's also Usain fucking Bolt and moves around the building at Mach 30, so that's just awesome. The Beaver is up next on the chopping block, and yes, his name is just the Beaver. I guess Jonachrome gave up on names here, but that's okay. What does he do? The Beaver acts as this game's Foxy, which it honestly didn't even need because of how often you're checking the cameras, but who really cares? The Beaver is sitting on the toilet taking a big fat patty whacker double-decker dump and reading a newspaper with several tasteful stories in it. Next to the toilet, you'll see a roll of toilet paper. Throughout the night, the more you fail to watch the Beaver, the smaller the roll of toilet paper will get. When he runs out of toilet paper, the Beaver will sprint at your right door. Also, quick side note, the Beaver has knife feet. I don't know why, it's just something interesting to note. Who's up next, huh? Who do I have in my sights? Boom! Grunkfuck, Grunkfuss the Clown. Arguably one of the most popular characters to come out of this series. Grunkfuss is the first character I've mentioned who doesn't start at the beginning of the night. Instead, he starts at 4 a.m. I love this clown's mechanic. It's incredibly cool. I should mention that this game deliberately doesn't tell you how to play, and it doesn't describe how any of the characters work, leaving you to figure it out yourself. I love this idea, and it can lead to you feeling pretty smart when you find a small detail that can help you figure out how a character works, and Grunkfuss is a perfect example. Grunkfuss doesn't show up on your cameras. Instead, he is only ever visible inside of your office. As the night goes on, he will become more and more visible via a hole in the wall of your office. Well, that doesn't sound fair, I hear you say, and I usually agree, until you put your thinking cap on and realize there's a hint in this game that perfectly explains how Grunkfuss works. On camera 5, there's a hole in the ground with 30 eyes inside. That number is very important. Every time you lift your camera up, you'll notice that one of the 30 eyes have disappeared, and every time you pull your camera down, Grunkfuss becomes more visible. If his eyes reach 0, when you pull the camera down, Grunkfuss will grunkfuck your shit up. I think this is such a cool little hint this game gives you to explain how he works. You could easily play through the whole game and never piece this together. This is something I really love when games do, and I'd really like to see more of it. But we've still got more to talk about, buddy. Let's move on to the Red Man. Red Man becomes active on hour 3 and starts on camera 3. You'll notice throughout the game up until this point that camera 3 has never been visible. That's because Red Man isn't technically visible on the cameras. Whichever camera he's on will be blacked out, which lets you know where he is. Red Man slowly moves from camera 3 to your left door where you'll be able to see him and close it. Just like the other door characters, you'll have to watch the camera for when he leaves. This brings me back to a point I made when talking about Flumpty. If Flumpty or Blam are on the same camera as Red Man, they too won't be visible, meaning there's a possibility you won't be able to find them, and a possibility that you'll shit your pants as I did when I couldn't find Flumpty because he was camping out with Red Man. So that was fun. The final character I have to briefly mention is Golden Flumpty, and I say briefly because there's not much to talk about. Sometimes you'll see him in your office, and when you do, you have to quickly pull up the cameras. If you don't, a dead sandwich is what you'll be turned into. In terms of characters, that's all One Night at Flumpty's has to offer. This game can be brutally hard. Obviously, like any FNAF game with enough practice, you'll be able to beat this game like clockwork. But hot damn, your first run through might very well be pretty difficult, especially considering you're not taught how to do a goddamn thing. But that's the first game. I'd personally say that it's fantastic. But what if I told you the second game is even better? Let's waste no time and jump into it. One Night at Flumpty's 2 is visually just as great as the first. Each setting looks fantastic. The game is significantly harder than the first, mainly because there's much more to focus on. To start, this game's phone call actually explains the rules, like a little bit. You're gonna have to do a lot of trial and error, but hey, it's still more than the first game gave us. The phone call this time around is a short song, which, that's just lovely, isn't it? The song explains if our lights are off, we're safe, and if they're not, we're about to get our cheeks spread apart so hard they rip off. So,
why is the light so important? Well, let's do what we do best and go over each threat one by one. Let's start with Flumpty. As he was in the last game, he's pretty basic in terms of mechanics. Like in the first game, he teleports around wherever and whenever he pleases, so don't think for a goddamn second you're safe, because you're not. He's hungry for ass, and you got a whole lot of it. He a hungry bitch. If at any point you can't find him on the cameras, he will be right outside of your door in the hallway, and in a few seconds will pop his head in and give you a blumpkin. Characters looking into your office actually brings up one of this game's central mechanics, which I think is really cool. On the bottom of your screen, you'll see an exposure meter. If at any point that meter fills all the way up, it's time for Flumpty and his friends to eat toast off your ass without the toast. When Flumpty peeks his head in, he will have his hands over his eyes to play a quick game of peekaboo with you. Be lucky that he's forgiving like this, because no other character from this point forward will be. While he has his eyes covered, your exposure meter will not increase. This gives you about half a second to turn the lights to your room off. After a few seconds, he will leave and you can turn your lights back on. But before we continue, let's go over what else happens when you turn your lights off. Let me quickly go over the camera and something I noticed about these games that I really like. Notice how in the first game, the camera didn't waste any power. Well, in this game it does, but it does it in a much more engaging way than it does in other FNAF games. Rather than just lowering an arbitrary number, you'll notice on the bottom of your screen you also have a laptop power meter, your laptop being your cameras. While your laptop is up, that meter will decrease, and when you put the laptop back down, the meter will slowly charge and increase again. I love this mechanic. It's still consequential to sit on your cameras, but it still keeps you in control. These games have such good balancing. I struggle to find other FNAF games to match in this department. If your laptop meter is to go completely empty, it will forcibly close and you'll have to wait for it to charge all the way back up before opening it. And when you do, you'll have to wait for the laptop to reboot. This may not seem like a very big deal, but when watching the cameras is as important as it is in this game, having to wait those 10 seconds can feel like an eternity. But back to turning the lights off. When the lights are turned off, you cannot access your cameras, and your laptop will not charge. This is one of those multiple ways this game keeps you from sitting alone in the dark. Something I think all of you chronic gooners should take note of. Blam Birthday Bitch Boy is next. He, like in the last game, works almost the same as Flumpty, moves around a set path, goes to your office, takes a sneak peek at your bits. However, this motherfucker don't play no games. No peekaboo for this guy. Once he's looking, your exposure meter starts to climb. This leads to you needing to watch the cameras and track his location, because even multiple small slivers over how godforsakenly long this night is will start to add up and lead to your asshole looking like a cave. Blam increases your meter faster than Flumpty does. Even though Flumpty is literally a chaos god of death, he increases your meter slower than any other character in this game. Something I think says a lot about his character. I'd say he's just a little harmless guy, but he also has canonically killed 1 billion birds with one stone. No, I'm not joking. Grunk Fuckass the Clown is also pretty similar to how he was in the first game. Psych! I fucking lied, bitch! Go look in the mirror at how fucking stupid your face is. You actually thought for a second I wasn't gonna lie straight to your stupid, dumb, ugly face, but I did. Anyways, Funko Pop the Clown can be seen crouched on camera too. Around 2 a.m. he will become active, with a hole appearing on your wall and a patience number appearing on camera too, and quickly decreasing. Once Grunkle Stan the Clown's patience wears thin, he'll pop his head through the hole in your wall and dramatically begin increasing your exposure meter. I'm talking Tyson Gay levels of quickness, and I say Tyson Gay instead of Usain Bolt because there's one character who increases it even faster. Eyesore is technically another character returning from the first. Remember the eyes that appeared in the hole on the floor that showed how many times you could flick up the camera before Fuckhead the Clown would ream you from behind? Yeah, that's him. That's Eyesore. Eyesore will start on camera 1, but won't be active until 4 a.m. Keep in mind, each hour in this game is long as fuck. He'll make his way to your office and peer in. When I tell you, the speed at which this bastard eviscerates your exposure meter is faster than the speed at which I bolt to the toilet after Indian food. I'm not lying. I suppose it makes sense given how many eyes he has, but like, damn, don't let this guy eye bang you for too long, no matter how sexually attracted you are to it. The last returning character we have to bring up is Redman. But Dxtr, what about the beaver? He fucking died. He fell into the toilet and fucking died. Are you happy? I didn't want to have to tell you, but you pulled my leg, dick. Anyways, Redman. At random points during the night, warning pop-ups will appear on your laptop. If you're not in your laptop, it will be signified next to your camera button with a warning sign like the music box from FNAF 2. When you see this warning message, it will be accompanied with a loading bar. If the loading bar fully increases, you'll be as dead as disco. All you have to do is click cancel. If you lose to Redman in this game, I have no sympathy for you. You have to try and lose to this guy. What about new characters? Well, there's only one, but he's pretty sick. The Owl. The Owl will appear on your cameras taking a fat-ass nap. Throughout the night, he will open his eyes and eventually leave the urinal he's perched on. When he does, you'll have to quickly check your vent cameras to see which vent he's about to assault you through. Once you know, you'll have to close the vent in your office in accordance with which side the Owl is attacking you from. If you don't, you guessed it, ask buffet and you're the main course. The vents don't waste any power, but only one of them can be closed at a time. So there's that. Additionally, you can close the vents even if your lights are off, which is incredibly generous and really just adds to the flow and pattern this game has. The final character I want to talk about is Golden Flumpty. So I guess I technically lied when I said Redman was the last recurring character, but fuck you. He works the same way as he did in the first game. Sometimes you'll see him in your office, either quickly turn the lights off or pull up your camera and he'll leave. Whoopity-doo, lore or something, I don't really know. That's all One Night at Flumpty's 2 has going for it. Well, it has a difficulty mode called Hard Boiled, which drastically increases the difficulty of the night, but it doesn't change any fundamental game mechanics, so I don't think it's worth diving into. One Night at Flumpty's 2 is such an enormous step up from the first, and that's saying a lot considering how amazing the first game really was. With the third game right around the corner, I can't wait to see what Jonachrome came up with. Oh, did I say right around the corner? Sorry, I meant 6 fucking years later. One Night at Flumpty's 3 released in 2021. Jonachrome made it clear he was never interested in making another Flumpty's game after 2, but the only reason he did is because Scott reached out to him for the Fanverse initiative. So what does 3 have to offer, and does it live up to the last 2? Flumpty's 3 is just like the last in one way. The art is phenomenal. Every single scene is fantastic and full of references. It makes the game very fun to look at. The office in this game is very frozen. You'll notice a thermometer in the corner of your screen. It's very important that you keep yourself warm and not let that meter reach empty, or you'll freeze to death like a bitch. You can go over to the furnace to have it slowly increase, and you'll need to be doing this throughout the night. How about the threats though? Returning from the last 2 games, we have Blam, who works very similarly to how he does in previous games. He'll move around the building in a set path and make it to your door, which in this game is really just a hallway. The cameras don't have power, so you should be camping them as often as you can. When Blam gets to your door is when we have to talk about a new mechanic, your camera. On the bottom of your screen, you'll notice a camera button with 20 uses. That's right, you can only use this camera 20 times throughout the night before it won't work anymore. So you better make sure you're keeping track of where every character is, because you don't want to waste any of these flashes. When Blam gets to your door, all you have to do is flash the hall and he'll run away. But be aware, there's no visual or auditory cue to signify that he's there, which is why watching the cameras is so important. Next, we've got another returning character, which by the way, there are no new characters, so I'll stop mentioning this. Anyways, the next character is Grunk Punk-Ass Slut Bitch the Clown. He does literally the exact same thing as Blam, but with one key difference. You do not want to flash him when he's in the hallway. The flash makes him scared and he'll pee his pants. That makes him embarrassed and he'll have to kill all the witnesses, and sadly for you, you're the only witness, so guess it's time to die. But being serious, while Grunkfuss is technically easier to deal with than Blam, he really makes you make sure you know where everyone is, because one false flash and it's game over. Next up on the chopping block, as I've said for the second time this video, is the Red Man. He becomes active at 1 AM and will make his way towards your furnace. On his furnace room camera, you'll see a warning telling you to stay away from your furnace. If you go to warm up by the furnace while this message is present, he'll eat your ass from the back, which I know some of you dirty freaks want, but for the rest of us normal people is something we'd prefer to prevent. I actually think this is a really nice mechanic. Something to keep you away from the only safe thing you have is super interesting. Knock knock, who's there? I don't really know, I don't usually answer my door, but we're talking about the eyesore next. He becomes active at 4 AM and actually can't be seen on the cameras. So how are you supposed to defend yourself? Well, lucky for you, you can actually see him in your hallway. Unlike the other characters, however, you'll actually have to flash eyesore twice to make him go away. And because your camera has a cooldown, this can lead to a deadly combo with Grunkussy. you'll need to make absolutely sure he's not in the hall when you go to Flash Eyesore. What about the owl? I hear you asking. Well, a better question would be, what about the beaver? Better yet, how about both of them, because they're both here in this game merged together as one in the form of the bee vowel. Talk about a freak of nature, am I right? Chat, if I ever end up looking like this freak, please pull the plug. I won't be mad. Anyways, the bee vowel starts at 2 a.m. and will appear on camera 3 in the hot tub. He will gradually climb out of the tub and crawl into your vent. This brings up the other side of your office where you can actually see the vent. This vent functions the exact same way the other door does. When you know the bee vowel is in the vent, all you have to do is flash him with your camera and he'll go away. But this does lead to a split path that you'll have to watch just as much as the door path, which can become stressful as the night progresses. Finally, we have to talk about Golden Flumpty, who is just as uneventful as he was in the last 2 games. When you see him on your cameras, you can't pull down the camera unless you switch to another camera he isn't on. Otherwise, he kills you. And that's all the threats. Survive until 6 a.m. and the final game in the Flumpty's franchise is over. In all honesty, I think this game isn't nearly as good as Flumpty's 2. I think that might be because of the fact that Jonachrome... Huh? What? What about Flumpty? I didn't talk about him? Oh, yeah, about that. Flumpty is pretty pissed that you survived as long as you should have, and is even more pissed at his friends for not being able to kill you. Being a god, Flumpty sets the time back to 12 a.m., murders all of his friends, and comes to get you himself. I lied. We're not even close to being done. Let's talk about this game's second night, Flumpty Night. You'll immediately notice some new stuff, but I'll talk about them as they become important. In this night, after killing all his friends, Flumpty transcends space and time and is able to morph his body and appear in multiple places at a time. He replaces all of his friends and takes a majority of the mechanics of the night. Let's go over each Flumpty clone together. It can get a bit confusing, and this night is a clusterfuck, but I'll hold your hand and explain everything as best I can. And let me tell you, my palms are clammy. The first clone to talk about is Another Flumpty. Yes, his name is literally, quote, Another Flumpty, end quote. This guy is the exact same as Birthday Boy Blam. Fireside Flumpty replaces the Red Man. Spider Flumpty, aka fucking animated Flumpty, again, that is literally his name, replaces the B vowel. But something cool I want to mention about Spider Flumpty is that he is gorgeously animated. Like, look at his animation when he crawls through the vent. It's gorgeous. Now we need to talk about the Flumpty clones that have their own mechanic in this game. Except not really. All-Seeing Eye Flumpty acts exactly like Grunkfuck does in Flumpty's 2. On camera 6, he'll have a patience timer, and when it reaches 0, he'll appear in your office through a hole in your wall. Also, you'll notice on this night that an exposure meter literally slides in from the side of the screen during the night, and All-Seeing Eye Flumpty will increase it. You get rid of him by flashing your camera at him. This night is about to get a lot more insane, I promise. Flumpty.exe replaces what the Red Man does from Flumpty's 2. Occasionally, a program will appear on your camera, and if you don't cancel it in time, then it's time for an ass-eating buffet. Shadow Flumpty works just how Grunkinky does in Flumpty's 1. The more you lower your camera, the further and further through positions he gets in your office. Lower it too many times, and he's gonna go spelunking in your asshole. I'm talking pounding ass pickles. Door Flumpty is where the 2 extra doors in your office come into play. He'll appear on either camera 8A or camera 8B. You can stop him by turning on your laser doors to keep him out. Also, you'll notice you have door power at the top of your screen, so you know, just something else you'll need to keep track of. Are you stressed yet? We're not done yet. While on your camera, sometimes you'll notice something really cool. Flumpty will fucking move the cameras 8A and 8B around to change which door that Door Flumpty attacks from. The first time I saw this while playing, I was freaking out. It's honestly such a cool idea that I've never seen done before. Finally, we have to talk about Virtual Boy Flumpty. Once 3 a.m. hits, if you look at your camera, you'll see a new section of the map that was never there before, slowly lower from the top of the screen and add 2 new cameras to the game for you to keep track of. I want you to keep in mind, all the other bullshit I've already mentioned is still happening right now. Virtual Boy Flumpty will make his way to camera 10, which you'll see has a door power switch. If you let Virtual Boy Flumpty get into this room, he will flip the switch, permanently turning off the laser doors you use to keep Door Flumpty out. So how do you stop Virtual Boy Flumpty? Well, this is really awesome. You have to close another set of doors on the fucking cameras. I swear to God I'm smoking crack because this is insane. There is actually so much shit going on this night. It's so much fun to play once you get into a groove. This is something that Jonachrome does that not many other FNAF creators can replicate. Although all of this is happening at the same time, you will almost never feel like completing it is based on luck. Everything flows together so smoothly, it's just super fun to play. Midway through 4 a.m., a new song will start playing and the true boss fight begins. This final stretch is so much fun. When the song starts playing, you'll notice every single bit of your UI start to change to completely random intervals constantly. However, all of the systems still work. Sure, you can't visually see where your thermometer is at, but it's still decreasing and you will still have to manage it. Flumpty sings a little song, and if you manage to get to 6 a.m., the game truly ends. We get one last final cutscene where Flumpty finally lets us leave, and we see what the world has become while we've been trapped with him. Nothing but a wasteland, and we begin to question if escaping was even worth it at all. And the One Night at Flumpty's universe comes to a close. One Night at Flumpty's was one of the earliest FNAF fan games made, and I personally think it still holds up as one of the best in the world. Each game got better than the last, which is something that sadly doesn't happen with most series. I'm very glad that Dxtr had such good attention to detail to make sure that the games never got stale. As much as I'd love to see more games from the Flumpty's franchise, I think it's best that 3 remains the final game, and I think Dxtr thinks that way too. Flumpty's 3 finally showed us the extent of Flumpty's power with an amazing boss battle at the end, and he even honored his word by letting you leave once you beat him. This is such an incredible ending to such an incredible game, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I think One Night at Flumpty's is as close to perfection as a FNAF game can be, and it truly shows. But of course, with the good comes the bad, and it's time to talk about Dxtr himself and the accusations that were thrown at him. 8 days after the release of One Night at Flumpty's 3, a user on Twitter posted a twit longer stating the following. Hello. My name is unimportant in this matter, and I'd rather stay anonymous. I love this community. I absolutely have been a part of the FNAF fandom ever since 2014. The point of this is to try to make it safer for everyone and minors. Don't go attacking Scott over this. He had absolutely no way of knowing who Dxtr really is. I also strongly insist that minors stay within their age groups when meeting friends in the same fandom online, whether artists or not. With that said, this is my testimony coming clean about Dxtr. After seeing the release of One Night at Flumpty's 3 and how Dxtr has insisted on staying within the community and fanverse, I cannot stand by and allow him to continue being within this fandom, and I really should have come forward much earlier when I initially found out. I was involved with plenty of his group DMs from 2016 to 2018. A girl by the name of Emily was 13 to 14 at the time, and he came all out about his relationship with her. Within group DMs we've had, Dxtr was already in his 20s. Charges cannot be pressed as Emily would need to do it herself as she would now be 19. I have evidence to prove this with links to all of it, and witness statements, and messages from Dxtr himself. This man should not be praised at all, and I hope this helps people see him for what he really is, and why he should be removed altogether from any community he has a high stance in. It can be gathered that Dxtr stated he was dating this girl, but was not going to do anything sexual until she was of legal age, which some would constitute as grooming. In my personal opinion, none of that is as damning as John's own messages. In one message, he flat out admits his plan to marry Emily, who, keep in mind, is a child. Dxtr also mentioned how they'd been dating for 2.5 years, and considering how she had her date of birth set at 2002, this would have made her about 14 years old when they started dating. It's also very clear that Dxtr knew that what he was doing was wrong, as in 2017 he was very concerned about the net neutrality laws, which he thought would cause conflict with his being able to communicate with her. The twitlonger wasn't up for long when Dxtr responded. The title of his response stated that both he and Emily knew that this would happen at one time or another. His response reads, "Well, if my statement means anything, here it goes. I'm not a child groomer and I'm not a pedophile. Plain and simple. I wouldn't dream of manipulating, abusing, or exploiting anyone, much less minors. And the twitlonger has no evidence to suggest that I did. It comes across as spiteful to me more than it comes across as a post made out of legitimate concern for anyone's safety. That said, I can't deny that the screenshots are real. When Emily and I met, dating wasn't even a consideration for obvious reason. We were friends who got along really well. My first relationship was with someone my age, which only lasted a few months because we didn't communicate very well. That was when I started questioning what was really important in a relationship and what actually makes two people compatible. I realized that Emily and I share the same religious beliefs, we have similar sense of humor, there's a lot of overlap in our interests and hobbies, and we could both comfortably talk about a lot of things. We both felt like maybe we were meant to be together and were just born at the wrong times. We started talking, making it clear right away that there would be nothing sexual about our conversations and that we wouldn't meet in person until she was at least 18. We enjoyed each other's company, just talking and hanging out. Occasionally we'd watch movies together. For a long time, I didn't see the harm in it. I always put her needs before my own, always claiming to do what was best for her, and in a way, I thought I was saving her from experiencing the same heartbreak I did. This year, 2021, would have been the year we met in person, with her age at 19. But this was also when I learned she was starting to have doubts about our relationship. She knew I didn't mean any harm, while also saying I had effectively prevented her from exploring other romantic options by approaching her when I did. I'd like to say I knew better, but until that moment, I kinda didn't. I'd thought I'd done everything right, and I gambled on the assumption that if we were meant to be together, it wouldn't have mattered in several more years. But the reality is, I didn't give her enough time to grow, and I shouldn't have even entertained the idea. It's a mistake I've made the one time, and I'll never make it again for as long as I live. For anyone who wishes to hear the victim side of the story, Emily and I are on good terms, and she's planning on making her own response to this as soon as she can. Regardless, I was wrong for pursuing a relationship with her. I can't change the past, but I hope that my story can at least serve as an example for others. Please, whether you're an adult or a minor, don't make the same mistake I did. You might have the best intentions and the utmost confidence in a potential relationship with someone out of your age range, and you might not see any red flags, but that's no excuse. It's not worth it. Minors should be especially careful in an online space because there are people out there who want to take advantage of it. This could have ended a lot worse. Stay safe. Later after that, Emily responded herself, and her response reads, Jonachrome is not guiltless in this, as I'm an adult now, I'm completely aware of that. But he is genuinely a kind-hearted person who just did something to himself that he shouldn't have. As a minor at the time, of course I was super dumb and naive, but as an adult, Jonachrome was 100% responsible for his actions. He has apologized to me several times, and I truly still believe he's a good person. We even talk on good terms even though we're separate. But he has recognized that he fucked up. So please, as the victim, leave the man alone. Let me clarify. He has never tried to solicit anything from me. He has never asked me to do anything I didn't want to. It was not good to consider us having a romantic relationship when I was very explicitly not old enough. But keep in mind, we've always been friends. Jonachrome is easygoing, fun to talk to. We used to watch movies together and talk about what we liked about them. We used to draw cute pictures for each other. We used to talk about the games we'd like. Morally, it was wrong to have romance between us, but it was innocent too. To say that it was grooming is where it becomes gray, because I feel like it was definitely unintentional somehow. That sounds like I'm confused, but I know why that is. If he had malice intent, he would have been much more persistent than he was. But no, he's not dangerous whatsoever. If Jonachrome attempts something like this again, yeah, I don't think I could trust him. He has done something awful, but that doesn't mean he himself is awful. What matters is how he moves on. If he's learned from this to know not to go any further from what he did to me. I was the one who confronted him about how a relationship would cause too many problems as an adult, and that's why I broke ties. Over those 6 years, I can say confidently that I care about the man's well-being. I don't want him to suffer. Let me say this again. Legally, he has not committed any crime. He's shown no clear intent to harm me, nor has he sent any harmful content to a minor. He is innocent in that respect, but that doesn't mean I'm excusing it. I'm just saying I, the victim, am okay. I'm also aware that no sexual stuff until legal is wrong and gross, because that does constitute as grooming. But there was still genuinely a relationship between us. Not romantically, but a friendship that we had. I can confidently say Jonachrome was a good friend. Yes, there was romance. It wasn't good by any means. He and I both knew there was something wrong with it, but I tried to pretend that it wasn't there. But please do not harass him. I can tell he's doing better because he talked to me before this mess got out. As for the person who exposed Jonachrome, I do not wish to be involved in this. I do not care about this anymore. I've moved on and so has he. If I am his only victim, then don't make any more accusation. I know this situation better than anyone. To everyone, don't say, I'm sorry this happened to you, because Jonachrome is already sorry, and to me, that's enough. I don't need your sympathy. Spread my response so people know what actually happened. As an adult, I'm not pressing any charges against Jonachrome, and I truly hope he's living his best life. He's been seeking therapy, and I do hope he'll make it out alive in this. His multiple apologies to me are proof of his self-improvement. I'm hoping this is enough. I do not want to make another statement, and frankly, I'm pissed that it even came out because he's hopefully not going to do this again, and I'm not traumatized from it. If he does it again, go ahead, talk about it. Otherwise, leave us alone. Jonachrome eventually made one more statement, which is way too long for me to cover in this video, but he basically says that he didn't groom Emily because grooming requires sexual intent, which he claims he never had while in the relationship. John had been gone for years, but has actually, as of writing this, released a video on his gaming channel 3 weeks ago. He says he's been in therapy and is looking forward to working on more projects. As far as I'm aware, we still haven't heard from Emily or the anonymous person who brought this to light, but everyone has seemed to move on and they have accepted their faults and took accountability. While what Jonachrome did was wrong, no doubt about it, I truly think he's good at heart. I and many others all hope that this was a one-time thing, and I hope that this was a very clear wake-up call to never do something like this again, and it appears that that is the case. I and many others are excited to see what Jonachrome has in store for us, even if it has nothing to do with the One Night at Flumpty's series. One Night at Flumpty's is truly an amazing game, made by someone with a regrettable past. Even if you choose to not follow Jonachrome anymore, these games are a perfect example of being able to separate the art from the artist, and recognize that Jonachrome made some terrible decisions, but at the end of the day, the work he produced is something that will likely never be able to be replicated again. But that's all I have to say about One Night at Flumpty's. Let me know what you think about these games in the comments below. In my Rainbow Friends video, I asked you all what your favorite Roblox horror game was and why. My favorite comment is this one by Ryko Janes. They go into deep detail about why they liked Pressure, and I don't have the time to read the whole comment, but I recommend you do. My girlfriend also really likes this game, and it might be the next subject of my next Roblox video. I'm still stuck between Pressure and Doors. Help me choose in the comments.
A plot twist is a literary technique that introduces a radical change in the direction or expected outcome of the plot in a work of fiction. Now tell me, can you think of a horror game that pulls off an insane twist? Maybe Resident Evil 8 in its crazy twist comes to mind. Now let me ask you another question. Can you name a FNAF game with a crazy twist? A twist so cool you have to sit back and think, wow, that was pretty sick. The game I'll be covering today has one of those twists, and I'm incredibly excited to share with you the amazing experience I had while playing Showman's The Awakening. For those of you already familiar with this game, you may know that it actually has a game that came before it. Kinda. Years ago, the same developer released a game called Phobia: The Awakening, using the Wiggles as inspiration for the characters. Well, turns out the dev wanted to remake their game using their own original characters to continue the story, so now here we are with Showman's. This may lead you to ask the question, if I've already played Phobia, is there even a point to playing Showman's? And trust me, this is a question I've asked myself. Originally, I saw people asking me to play Showman's. I played Phobia on my second channel, Dxtr Black, not knowing at the time that Showman's was a thing, learning soon after the first episode went up that it was in fact a thing. So I questioned, does it even bother to play it? Well, recently I've made the decision to do exactly that and give Showman's a try. And let's just say, if you've played Phobia, play Showman's. It's everything Phobia is and more. So join me as we quake our asses into Showman's The Awakening. In Showman's, we play as a guy named Mark Ward, an employee of Showman's Pizza Place. And in night 1, we're introduced to 2 of the animatronics that will be trying to insert their fingers into orifices we'd really prefer they keep their grubby little hands away from. But before we can talk about them, we should talk about the tools at our disposal. Something really interesting you'll notice about the office is that you're able to look everywhere. Up, down, left, right, behind you, below you. It's actually really cool. It's really the first thing I noticed jumping into the game. The reason for this is actually because Showman's wasn't created in ClickTeam Fusion like most FNAF games are. Instead, it was created in Blender, which is what most FNAF games use to model their characters, and is something I also had no idea could be used to program a game. So that was pretty cool learning for the first time. Anyways, you'll see 2 large hallways on your left and right, which you can light up using buttons on your desk. In front of you is this lady. Hey, hottie. She's not hot. I'm not even gonna lie. She's not even bad. who we'll be talking about later in the video. And if you look behind you, you'll be able to see the clock where you can tell how much longer of the night you have to get through. Oh yeah, and of course, there's cameras, because it really wouldn't be a FNAF game without those. With that out of the way, now we can talk about the first two threats this game introduces, Johnny and Harry. Now I know, those names aren't very normal sounding when thinking in terms of Five Nights at Freddy's, when usually we're having names so utterly stupid you'd be forced to think they were a fictional character. But no, these two are still robots, and you still cannot have intercourse with them, so please remove all thoughts of that nature from your head for the remainder of this video. Johnny and Harry both start from the show stage and do the exact same thing. Johnny will move through the cameras to your right hallway, and Harry will move through your left hallway, where they will then enter what I'm going to be calling their attack mode. During their attack mode, they have 5 phases. Each phase has a sound cue, and it's important that you're listening for them. With each phase, they'll move closer and closer towards your office, with the final phase having them walk up to you. Obviously, you can check their distance by flashing the light at them, and by doing so, you will also temporarily stun them in place. However, I would highly recommend you don't turn the lights on when they're in the hall, as I personally feel it's much more efficient to just let them attack you so they can piss off as fast as possible. Every time Johnny or Harry enters a new phase, their eyes will glow for a short time after their sound cue plays. So when you hear it, you can just turn in the direction to double check that they've moved. On these earlier nights, you really don't have to be super careful with them. Flashing lights and not counting sound cues isn't really important since they're your only threats. So I'll get into a bit of a better strategy for them later on. However, once they enter your office, you'll have to quickly throw on a spare mask to fool them into walking away, just like the animatronics from Five Nights at Freddy's 2. And that's really it. Night 1 is pretty damn easy, really just introducing the basics needed to understand 2 very important mechanics. After beating Night 1, we see a cutscene, something that was not originally in Phobia. In it, we meet with the founder of Showman's, Jason Baker. He confirms with us that only Johnny and Harry were active on our shift, and we confirm. Apparently, this should not be happening, and it's a known issue. So that's good at least. Jason tells us that a previous employee mentioned more characters moving, which in all honesty doesn't bode well for my anus, given the fact we still have 5 more nights of this to deal with. But we get our things and go home for the night, only to come back to work in the morning. Night 2 introduces 2 new animatronics, and let me tell you, this is where the game starts to show how much of a pain in the dick it's about to become. The first character we should talk about is the fine shite sitting in front of us, Peggy. Peggy reminds me a lot of the scrapped animatronics from Five Nights at Freddy's Pizzeria Simulator, just given the fact of the way she moves subtly like them. She also reminds me a lot of what Anissa's husband really doesn't want her to do to him. Whenever you're not looking at her, whether that be checking on the cameras, looking at the hallways, or checking the clock behind you, Peggy has a chance to advance phases. You'll be able to see her start by looking down and slowly transfer through the phases until she's ready to attack. In order to reset her, all you have to do is flip the breaker switch on your desk to shock her and she'll reset. But be careful not to just spam this lever over and over, because every time you shock her, she becomes more aggressive, leading to the end of nights becoming incredibly stressful due to how fast she'll be attacking you. Cap'n Cackle is the other menace introduced on Night 2. He is this game's Foxy. If you couldn't tell by looking at him, he's a pirate, just like Foxy. Also, he looks like he's cracked out of his fucking mind, zooted to the fucking moon. Seriously, look at this geeked out motherfucker. Holy shit, bro hasn't slept in 18 days. Look at those eye bags. What the hell happened? Stop looking at me, dude. Tell me that guy doesn't smoke crystal meth. Look at those fucking eyes. What are you doing? Hey. That's the face I make when I'm about to eat ass, bro. Anyways, similar to Foxy, he'll have several phases on camera 6. Watching him will slow his progression and even in some cases make him go backwards. If he happens to leave camera 6, he doesn't do exactly what Foxy does. Instead, he'll just start moving through your cameras like any other character would, albeit very quickly. If you manage to stare at him in one of those other cameras, he will go back to camera 6, where you can continue oogling at him to make him stay put. Both Peggy and Cap'n Cackle work very well together, and the same goes for Johnny and Harry. We have 2 other central characters left to introduce, and you'll notice that those 2 also work very well in tandem with one another. This is something I need to give this game praise for. It is so incredibly good at introducing new mechanics in a way that's stressful, yet engaging and fun. You introduce Peggy, a character that moves when you don't look at her, and Cap'n Cackle, another character who moves when you're not looking at him. And because these two characters are in different places, it forces you to learn how to balance them together. God, it's so fucking cool. Similar to last night, this night also has a cutscene after completion. In it, we're seen walking to the exit of the building. We hear a noise and quickly turn around to see an unknown animatronic staring back at us. It stares for a while before turning around and walking away. This is a character we haven't yet seen. Even the characters we'll be talking about on later nights can be seen on the cameras all the time, but this one can't. Keep him in the back of your head as he'll become important later. For now, let's move on to Night 3. Night 3 only introduces one character, but it also introduces another incredibly important mechanic, that being your vents. The animatronic introduced on Night 3 is Tony the Chef. He will enter your vents. You'll notice on your cameras that you have 3 camera vents. Tony can enter 2 of them, those being either camera 12 or camera 11. In these vents, he will have multiple phases he will move through before attempting to enter your office. With each movement, a very quiet sound cue will play, a stark contrast to Phobia, where the sound cue was very noticeable. By double-clicking on a vent cam, you can lock the vent. Locking a vent uses no power because the game has no power to begin with. Praise God. Once a vent is closed, you can keep it closed as long as you'd like, with no consequences. The only downside is that you can only close one vent at a time. So this night really isn't all too different from Night 2. Well, now's the time when I want to talk about sound cue counting with Johnny and Harry, as it's this night where you'll probably want to start getting used to doing that. As I mentioned earlier, Johnny and Harry each have 5 different phases in your hallway. The first is when they initially enter the hallway. You'll be able to tell because you can see their eyes in the hallway for a brief moment, and because you'll be able to hear their big old feet stomping around, kind of like I want Toy Chica to stomp on my testicles. Once one of them enters your hallway, you can stop checking on them and focus on listening. Start a mental count of 3 in your head. All sounds in this game are directional, so that really helps. Whenever you hear footsteps on either side of you, decrease that side's number by 1. Once the counter reaches 0, you know that the next time you hear footsteps from that side is when they'll walk into your office to attack. Okay, 4 left, or 3 till he's at the last stage. 2 left until he hits door. Okay, 1 more. And he's at the line, and he's walking the thin line. 1 more. I want to see how close I can cut it. Hi. Oh, yes. Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for that. Doing this while they're both attacking you at the same time can get a little overwhelming, and on later nights they do like to attack together a lot. But if you can nail this counting strategy, they really shouldn't be too much of an issue. After completing Night 3, we get to watch another lovely cutscene. In it, we're looking through the factory for who the fuck knows what. We open a crate and find a Johnny plush inside. Seeing this toy seems to trigger some primal instinct in us, and we pass the fuck out. Honestly, bro, probably not the greatest place to lose consciousness. I'm not even gonna front. We awake in another room, only to look up and see Showman. Scared as shit, we wake up from our slumber only to realize it was a short dream we had after we had passed out. There is clearly something mentally wrong with our dear beloved Mark. We just have to figure out what it is. Night 4 introduces the man himself, Showman. Showman works in perfect tandem with Tony, also attacking your vents. Although, unlike Tony, Showman can only attack your camera 13 vent. However, he also fucking loves to do this at the same time that Tony is jumping penis first into your vents. Showman only has 3 phases in the vent before attacking, so notably faster than Tony. So while both of them are attacking your vent, you really have to be counting their positions to figure out whose vent you need to close first, because once again, you can only have one closed at a time. If one of those fuckers get into your office, they're gonna crank that soldier boy and clock you in the jaw. I'm just gonna go ahead and put this on and hope to God. Okay, so it didn't work. I couldn't tell which one was closer, bro. I thought the guy I had blocked off was closer. I couldn't tell. All in all, each character is incredibly easy to deal with. But because of how perfectly they all work together, it can lead to an incredibly stressful experience trying to play against all of them at the same time. However, never at any point throughout my playthrough did I feel like this game was unfair or that RNG was too much of a factor. This game, dare I say it, might have borderline perfect video game balancing. After completing night 4, of course, we get another cutscene. This one taking place before we go to work for the night. Before we enter our car, we get a call from Jason, telling us not to come in to work tonight. He says things are getting too dangerous and that it would be unsafe for us to go through our shift. We agree to not go in tonight, except the plot twist is that I fucking lied and we're gonna go in anyways, because we hate authority like a 16-year-old white boy from the suburbs. On night 5, we get a call from the phone guy, and let me tell you, he is absolutely pissed that we decided to come in for the night. He explains that anything in that building that moves will be demolished in the morning. He tells us to do whatever it is we're trying to do and get out, because they're not going to send anyone into the building to get us out. Other than that, night 5 is exactly what you'd think it is, just a much more difficult version of night 4, really testing your reflexes and especially your nerve control. But on this night is when I have to bring up really the only problem I have with this game: volume. This game is actually the loudest fucking game on planet Earth. Holy shit, everything makes noise, and it makes a damn lot of it at that. There are typically ambient sounds in FNAF games, but for the love of God, this game plays intense music throughout most of the night, and it is loud as dick and balls. Want to hear the best part? As you get closer and closer to 6 a.m., the music adds more components and gets even fucking louder! This really doesn't help when so much of my strategy revolved around listening to sound cues. It's fucking crazy just how loud this game is! Now granted, was this something that was intended? Most definitely. And I'm not even saying that it's a bad thing, because obviously, inherently, it isn't. I was still able to beat the game just fine, and I feel like most other people would be able to beat it just fine as well. But this is something I couldn't not talk about. I love this game, but of course I'm not going to always be able to glaze everything I see, and I think this is truly the only flaw this game has. But hey, who gives a fuck about what I think? Let's move on to the cutscene, baby. Let me just say, I love this cutscene. I think everything about it is great. The pacing, the acting, everything is just so good that I don't want to ruin it by just talking about it. I'd much rather just show you.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, put your hands together for our birthday
Well, god damn. We really should have listened and not come back, huh? So, it's safe to say that our pal Mark really got fucked here. Something I think is actually really cool. It's fairly common for FNAF games to have a character die in them, most commonly a phone guy, but to actually see it like this is just awesome. Going into night 6, we actually get a cutscene before the night happens rather than after it. In it, we play as the phone guy going into the building to get Mark. After a bit of searching, we find him, and once again, I think it'll just sit much better with you if you just watch it for yourself.
Mark? Is that you?
You shouldn't have went in there, bro. You shouldn't have went in there, bro. You shouldn't have went in there, bro. You should have done that shit. Oh, fuck.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
Oh, my God.
What do I do? Keep yourself together.
Are you fucking me? That's right. Turns out Mark isn't dead, but is just kind of possessed. Phone guy, or his real name, Matthew, runs back to the office with Mark on the pursuit, and night 6 begins. Night 6 consists of 4 threats, 2 of which we've already covered, Cap and Cackle and Peggy. However, you'll immediately notice that they both look pretty fucked up. Why is this? Well, turns out by demolish the animatronics, they really meant set the whole fucking building on fire. Because once again, it wouldn't be a FNAF game without a fire, right? Oh yeah, and of course, they are way more aggressive. Another thing you'll notice immediately is that we're stuck with the flashlight instead of the building lights. And let me tell you, as I'm sure you can already see, it is dark as fucking shit in this goddamn building with no lights. Of course, your flashlight has power, so you'll have to use it sparingly. You'll need to use it to check the hallways and to even be able to see Peggy in front of you. This honestly adds a whole new level of fear to this game, mainly with Peggy. I never got very good at telling when she switched positions, and to now have it where I can't even naturally see her just added a whole new fear factor, and I love it. The other 2 threats are the animatronic we saw in the post-night 2 cutscene, dubbed the Figure, and Mark himself, which is honestly one of the coolest twists I've ever seen. Having the character you've been playing as the whole time flip like this, it's insane. It's honestly one of the coolest things I've ever seen come out of a FNAF game. Let's start with Mark. Mark works the same as Harry and Johnny, except I feel like he's even easier. He can attack from either of the 2 halls, and unlike Johnny and Harry, you cannot see his eyes. He's also much, much quieter. The reason I think he's easier? Well, you don't have to do any mental counting to tell when he's going to attack, as he has a totally unique sound cue for when he enters your office. So as long as you've got fast reflexes, it's really just a game of waiting to hear the sound cue and putting on the mask. The final new threat on this night is, of course, the Figure. He takes the place of Tony and Showman attacking your vents. He can attack any of the 3 you have, since there won't be 2 characters going for the vents at the same time. Again, I honestly feel like this is easier than Tony and Showman. Of course, the Figure is fucking light speed fast when choosing and climbing through vents, so as long as you've got fast reflexes, it really shouldn't be too much of a challenge. Ironically enough, the main challenge I had with this night was not the 2 new threats, but the 2 returning threats, Peggy and Cap and Cackle. Again, these 2 have the best synergy out of any of the characters in this game, so bringing them back for night 6 was a no-brainer. Really, the actual problem for me was Peggy. The sheer speed at which she moves is enough to make you shit in your britches, and nearing the end of the night, she will be moving at a speed Usain Bolt would be creaming his pants over. But if you can control your nerves for long enough, you'll complete night 6 and move on to the post-night cutscene. Matthew runs as fast as he can to the exit, only to find it locked. Turning around, we see Mark slowly creeping up on us like the booty cheek creep freak. The screen cuts to black, and we're left with only the screams of Matthew echoing throughout the pizzeria, and Showman's The Awakening comes to a close. Kind of. We're not exactly done just yet. There's actually 6 other secrets this game has to offer, that being the secret tapes. On each night, you will be able to find one of these tapes and play them later. On night 1, if you check camera 9, you'll be able to see a tape on the shelf in the top left corner. Night 2's tape is located in one of the drawers in your office. Night 3's tape is located on camera 3 on a shelf in the bottom left corner. Night 4's tape is located on camera 2 at the top of the screen. Night 5's tape is located on camera 5 on a high shelf in the middle of the camera, and Night 6 tape is conveniently located directly in front of you on the desk. Hey there, post-scripting Deku here. Turns out I'm fucking wrong. These are not the locations of the tapes on every night. Turns out every single night, besides the 6th one, has a random location for each tape, each being on a different camera. This was just the order that I had. So, yeah. Sorry about that. These tapes, as I'm sure you could have guessed, go over some extra bits of lore to help us piece together the story. And this is the part of the video where I say, I'm very sorry guys, I'm terrible at talking about story, but I'm going to try my best here. Tape 1 shows all of the characters on stage singing the happy birthday song to a kid whose name isn't explicitly said. We can see by the date of the tape that this takes place in 1995. Tape 2 seems to be a sort of log from Jason, explaining his reasoning for why he believes the characters are acting so hostile. Originally, when they were first being built, they attempted to add an advanced facial recognition system that would allow the characters to actually see and think for themselves. Although the system never ended up working as intended, they wiped the idea from their systems. Well, guess what, fucker? Turns out they really didn't, and Jason seems to think that this is the reason the characters are acting the way they are. Jason makes a brief mention of an unnamed him and questions if one of his employees are potentially tampering with the characters. I'm guessing that him is referring to either Mark or the figure. Tape 3 shows two guys working on Tony. They're talking about how these robots should be scrapped because of how old they are, and then the guy in the back says a sentence that I literally cannot for the fucking life of me decipher. Like many other things in this game, the static that plays during these cutscenes is so fucking loud I can't hear anything except it. I'll play what he says here, and if any of you guys can decipher it, please let me know in the comments.
That company's been up and dealt with recently. Why?
Tape 4 is one of my favorites. It really gives off the FNAF VHS style that I really like. A maintenance worker is running a test on Cap and Cackle. It doesn't quite go as planned as he bugs out, so they restart him and then get attacked. Afterwards, showing the lifeless corpse of the employee laying on the floor in front of Cap and Cackle. It's just such an unnerving moment to see this in person. Usually when it comes to FNAF games and death, you don't see it. So seeing it in a game like this is really unnerving, and it adds a sort of realism to the actual events that are taking place. Tape 5 is probably my favorite of all the tapes, being the most terrifying in my opinion. In it, we're in the perspective of what sounds like a young girl. Hiding under a table, we hear a scream from another room. Shortly after, Johnny walks into the room and starts to look around. The girl accidentally makes a noise, and when she looks back up, Johnny is staring at her, and he quickly goes for the kill. This is such a fucking horrific and terrifying situation to think about being in, and I think that's why I like it so much. Just imagining being in the same situation makes my hair stand. Tape number 6 is an odd one. We appear to be being spoken to by the figure. He tells us that the birthday we saw earlier was Timmy's 12th birthday. He had two of his friends with him that day, and it was a party made specifically for him. Then we see 3 drawings of his friends, all of them sad. The figure appears in front of us and slowly glances up before the tape ends. Again, as I've previously stated, lore analysis is not my strong suit at all, so I really can't even begin to imagine what anything here means. I know robots mad and robots kill, and I think that is neat enough. Overall, Showman's The Awakening is such a big step up from Phobia, and while I still do love that game, I think I love Showman's even more. Amazing graphical upgrades, fantastic cutscenes, and a gameplay loop that's so fun, difficult, yet still not frustrating. This game really has it all, and I truly think it's a fantastic game to play if you're at all interested in horror games. Even if you're not a huge Five Nights at Freddy's fan, I still think you should give it a try. But let me know what you think. Do you agree with me, or do you think that reimagining this game from Phobia wasn't really worth it? Let me know in the comments below. In my Five Nights at Candy's video, I asked you guys if you thought Five Nights at Candy still holds up today. My favorite comment is this one by the Phantom Split. It's too long for me to get into right here, but I think you should pause to read it. Depravity. Something that plagues several corners of the internet. Whether you like to think about it or not, disgusting people lurk everywhere. They're in every community, interacting with countless people, and in the worst cases, interacting with minors. They corrupt even the most wholesome of communities
and snake their way into people's trust. But even the slimiest of snakes get the light shined on their dark desires eventually. And while it may hurt people knowing that someone they looked up to or someone who created something they really enjoyed were one of these snakes, it's always important to remember, though, that a bad apple doesn't always spoil the whole orchard. Today, we'll be talking about an incredibly infamous game in the Five Nights at Freddy's community. I'm not the first, nor will I be the last to speak about it, but I and many other sensible people are capable of separating the art from the artist and are plenty capable of commenting and criticizing a piece of media without attaching its creator to it. And that's what I'm going to be doing today. Towards the end of this video, I will also be talking about the creator of this game to give you a better understanding of what he was like before he seemingly left the internet. If things are about to get uncomfortable or depraved, I will give ample warning before we talk about said subjects. But in general, viewer discretion is advised. Come with me as we dive into the sick and depraved world of Dormitabus. But before we talk about the disgusting story of this game that would make most normal people want to throw up, we first have to talk about the actual gameplay, which I'll tell you is definitely something. I'll let you be the judge of whether or not it's actually good. There's no better place to start than night one, which I will mention, Dormitabus takes a different approach to nights than most FNAF games. Generally speaking, FNAF games have 5 nights, corresponding to 1 work week on the job, with a typical 6th day of overtime and 7th optional night to round out the week. Since in Dormitabus we play as a character who isn't actually working anywhere, Dormitabus is not tied to a typical week, instead having 10 nights rather than the typical 6. So let's dive right into night 1. Let's start by talking about this goofy-ass office. You can travel from one side of the office to the other. One side of the office lets you look at your cameras, and the other side of the office has literally fucking nothing. But I'll go over why the useless side of the office is technically not useless in a moment. Another question you may have is, why the hell do we run under the table to get to the other side of the room when there's plenty of space on both sides of the table to walk around? Now you see, the answer to that question is fuck you. But now let's actually talk about some animatronics. As usual, I will explain each animatronic as they're introduced into the game, and on night 1, we only have one animatronic to deal with, that being Havoc Freddy. Try your best not to focus on these goofy-ass designs. They have their own charm, in a way. Havoc Freddy is one of the most simple characters in all of Dormitabus. Freddy will move throughout the cameras, slowly inching towards your office. He arrives at your left door, and when he does, you can turn to your left to double check that he's there. You'll be able to see him peering in at you. When he's there, you'll need to run to the other side of the room. At that point, he will almost immediately go away. I have no idea why this scares him away. I guess he's brain dead, but I'm not going to complain about an easy mechanic. Fun fact, you can actually make this mechanic even easier by never even checking if Freddy is at your door. Freddy makes a very noticeable sound cue when he arrives at your door, that being the sound of a door creaking directly in your left ear. I wonder if the other animatronics will be any harder. As mentioned, Havoc Freddy is the only enemy in night 1, so beating it should be a cakewalk. What does night 2 have in store? Well, night 2 doesn't have Havoc Freddy present, and this is where I want to bring up something about this game that I actually think is pretty cool. In most FNAF games, as the nights go on, more and more animatronics will be added, and on top of that, they will become more and more aggressive. Dormitabus takes a different approach. Because of how many characters there are, it would not be possible to deal with all of them at once if their AI levels were super high. So instead, the game experiments with animatronic combinations, pairing a few animatronics together, rather than throwing all of them at you at the same time, which I think is actually pretty cool. But for animatronics in night 2, we have Havoc Chica and Am I Real, also known as Cake Bear. Let's start with Havoc Chica, as her mechanic is the easiest to deal with of the two. Havoc Chica is pretty much just a slightly more annoying version of Havoc Freddy, with one deep, cutting, wounding flaw that I'll get to later. Chica will move around the building and make her way to your right door. Once Chica gets to your door, you can turn to check if she's there, but like Freddy, she also makes a very obvious sound cue, that being laughing in your right ear. When Chica is at the door, all you need to do is run to the useless side of the room and stare at Chica. Once she leaves, you will have to very quickly run back to the camera side of the room. If you don't move back fast enough, Havoc Cupcake will have a feast with your yeast. That's disgusting. I'm sorry. Oh my god. Now it's time to talk about Am I Real? Am I Real moves around the cameras at random. Whenever he enters a new camera, he will audibly state which camera he moved to. Once you hear him say a camera, you will have to switch to that camera and check which form he's in. Am I Real has two possible forms, one form being Am I Real, a gross Springtrap looking design, and the other form being Cake Bear, a much more normal Freddy looking design. If you check the camera and see Cake Bear, you're free to continue playing the game as usual, no call for alarm. However, if you check the camera and you see Am I Real, you will have to stay and stare at that camera for what can feel like at times an entire minute, until Am I Real turns back into Cake Bear. Now, this may sound scary, especially when you think about the fact that in order to run to the other side of the room to avoid Havoc Chica and Freddy, you have to turn the cameras off. But the game knew this would be a problem, so when you shut the cameras off to move to the other side of the room, it will still count as you staring at that camera, meaning that Am I Real will still turn back to Cake Bear even if you're on the other side of the room, as long as the last camera you were looking at was Am I Real's. If you don't watch Am I Real, he will appear at your right door, and once he's there, there's nothing you can do to stop him from giving you a rough spanking that a lot of you freaks will really like. If you can manage all of that, then congratulations! You're ready to move on to Night 3. Night 3 uses Havoc Freddy, Am I Real, and two new characters, Soul Cage and Molten Evil. I'll cover Molten Evil first. Molten Evil will only ever appear in your office. When you see him, he will start to cover your screen with blue plasma. Once this plasma is on your screen, you will have to play dead by looking up at the ceiling. Don't ask, I know it doesn't make any sense, but just pretend like it does for me. After looking at the ceiling for long enough, the plasma will go away and you'll be safe to look down again. If you look up before the plasma is on your screen, Molten Evil will wait until you look back down before putting the plasma on your screen, so looking up early really only just stalls him. Soul Cage is somewhat similar in a way. Soul Cage will move around the cameras and slowly piece itself together. Once it's put together fully, it will make its way to your right door. Once he arrives, he too will play a sound cue to let you know he's there. When he does, you'll have to look over at him. Afterwards, he'll enter your office and move up onto your ceiling. In order to get him to leave, all you have to do is stare up at the ceiling at him until he goes away. If you haven't noticed yet, every single character can be dealt with by staring at them. And if you're hoping that the other characters will be different, most of them will cause you to be sorely disappointed. Hate to break it to you. Wait, who am I kidding? I love breaking bad news. Night 4 only introduces one new character, but the returning characters are Havoc Freddy, Havoc Chica, and Am I Real. The new character is Havoc Puppet. Havoc Puppet moves around the cameras and makes its way to your back window, which is located right behind your computer. Once Havoc Puppet appears in your window, it will make a very noticeable sound cue. At that point, all you have to do is turn around to your window and stare at it until it goes away. Are you starting to notice a possible game mechanic flaw with Dormitabus? Literally every character is answered by looking at them, and that's literally it. Hopefully, we get a new character soon that's at least a little different. Holy fucking shit, this new character is bullshit. Okay, let's take a step back and relax for a second. Every character up until this point has been Baby Caca easy mode. Night 5 consists of Soul Cage, Havoc Puppet, Am I Real, and the two brand new Wombo combo, Havoc Foxy and Golden Call. Havoc Foxy and Golden Call are pretty much one and the same, as one of them really can't work without the other. Havoc Foxy is on camera 5, something I thought was weird because the phone guy on this night says that he's on camera 4, which is just flat out wrong, but let's move past that. Havoc Foxy has 3 phases on his camera, which the final has Foxy standing out of his curtains. You can slow down Foxy by watching his camera, and this will become very important because you want to avoid his 3rd phase as much as you can. However, this can prove difficult because of one character I'm sure you've already thought about, Am I Real? With Am I Real hogging most of your camera time, Foxy is free to buttfuck you as much as he wants. Once Foxy reaches phase 3, Golden Call comes into play. After reaching phase 3, Golden Call will send a voicemail to your computer with a Trojan virus attached. In order to remove the Trojan, you'll have to type in a password. How do you get the password? Well, this is when phase 3 Foxy becomes important. While in phase 3, Foxy will be holding a sign with the randomly generated phrase on it. You'll have to read the phrase on the sign and find the longest word. The longest word will be the password you need to get rid of the Trojan. Once you remove the Trojan, you will have to very quickly run to the other side of the office and watch the right side door as Foxy will soon be approaching. Once Foxy peers in, all you have to do is stare at him until he goes away. Afterwards, you'll be free to go back to your cameras and resume business as usual. Congrats! You've successfully survived a golden call attack. Are you stressed? Well, you should be, because you're going to be seeing a lot more of that. Again, the real problem with Havoc Foxy and Golden Call isn't really their mechanics. That's fine. The problem really comes down to Am I Real? Again, Am I Real constantly requires your attention as he moves around the cameras often. Just by himself, he'll take away from your time stalling Foxy, and once you get a Trojan, you'll have to stop looking at Am I Real to find the password. But not watching Am I Real will get you killed really easily. Generally speaking, from my experience, you want to drop everything for Golden Call, get the password in as fast as you can, quickly switch back to Am I Real's camera before running to the other side of the room to watch Foxy. I feel like this will give you the most success. Night 6 includes Havoc Foxy, Havoc Chica, Molten Evil, and Am I Real. While that alone may sound like a very unfun time, just wait until I introduce the next most frustrating character on the planet, the BOA, or as I like to call it, Boa, aka Boa Bitch Boy. Boa starts in a box on the cameras and slowly emerges from it, afterwards making its way to your right door. Once there, it will give you a sound cue. When you hear it, you will need to quickly move to the other side of the room. Something pretty interesting about Boa is that he actually speaks to you. If you run into the other side of the room, Boa says this. Once you get to the other side of the office, just like most characters, all you have to do is look at it. You might be wondering why this character is so frustrating if he acts exactly the same as Havoc Chica. Well, the answer to that question is simple. Boa Bitch Boy sits at your door for approximately 17 years, and that number came from countless hours of crunching the numbers, analyzing algorithms. I promise it's very accurate. That's seriously why Boa is such a difficult character to deal with. Mixed with all the other characters that require so much of your attention, having a character that requires double or maybe even triple the amount of time can feel like a purgatory. But if you can handle that, you'll be on to Night 7. Night 7 contains Soul Cage, Molten Evil, and the deadly Wombo combo of Havoc Foxy, Golden Call, and Am I Real. No new characters on this night, but I'm sure it's just so that players have some time to find some strategies that can fend off the Butthole Trilogy gang. Night 8 is where this game cranks the dial up to 1,000. While it introduces no new characters, the combo of characters present is enough to make any grown man cry. I know I did. Night 8 consists of Havoc Freddy, Havoc Chica, Havoc Foxy, Golden Call, Am I Real, and the icing on the cake, the Boa. This lineup of characters is actually so disgusting, I find it difficult to use vocabulary fitting enough to describe my disgust. I could dish out 100 vulgarities, and it still wouldn't be enough to portray the feeling of dread you get while trying to beat this night. The Wombo combo mixed with the Boa is already bad enough, but throw Freddy and Chica into the mix and you're itching for somebody to commit quintuple homicide on everybody in their domicile. This is probably the most infamous night in this entire game. There's a one-on-one boss fight on a later night, but that doesn't even compare to this bullshit. You want to know the main issue? The main issue is that this night is entirely dependent on luck. That's the worst part. Most people who play FNAF will tell you that luck is the most unenjoyable part of any FNAF game because it doesn't matter how much you practice. Your chances of winning is entirely dependent on whether or not the game decides to fuck you in the asshole. And for some unfortunate people who played this game soon after it released, had to deal with an absolutely foul bug. Remember when I said that Chica had a terrible flaw? This is the time where I get to explain that flaw to you, the viewer. Chica used to have an incredibly glaring bug, that being, you would hear Chica laugh, signaling for you to move to the other side of the office to stare at her. So you do, but as you turn to look at her, she won't be there. Moments later, Nightmare Cupcake would kill you, almost like you ignored Chica altogether, but you know you didn't, and she just didn't appear. This would happen incredibly frequently. Fun fact, it was actually this exact bug that made Dawko give up on this night and skip it. I can only imagine how incredibly frustrating it must have been for players to pour so much time into this night, get to 6 AM, only to then die because Chica decided she didn't want to work. Absolutely foul. I never had to deal with this bug, so it appears to not be a problem anymore, but let me know in the comments if you've experienced the problems with this Havoc Chica bug. If you can somehow manage to keep your sanity intact through Night 8, then you can finally move on to Night 9. And let me tell you,
it will feel incredibly underwhelming because Night 8 is so much harder. Night 9 consists of Soul Cage, Havoc Puppet, Havoc Foxy, Golden Call, Molten Evil, and Am I Real? Can you figure out why this night is easier than the previous? Yeah, you're exactly right. It's because the boa isn't there to slam your dick in a car door. I don't have much to say about this night, honestly. The voice acting of the phone call is pretty questionable, but I'll talk more about the phone calls in a while. Night 10, however, I do have something to talk about. Remember how I said one of the nights in this game is a one-on-one boss fight? Yeah, this is that night. You go up against a character you haven't seen before named Garvey. Now, since Garvey is the only animatronic on this night, you may think it's going to be easy. And while I'd say it's still easier than Night 8, it's definitely not easy by any means, so get that thought out of your head right now, bucko. So I'm going to warn you ahead of time that Garvey's mechanics are not technically difficult, but you'll understand why he's such a pain in the ass as this explanation goes on. Let's get one huge problem out of the way. You're only allowed to be looking at the cameras for a specific amount of time throughout the night. The more you look at the cameras, the darker your vision gets. It's definitely slow, but once it starts to get dark, you'll totally be able to tell. Garvey can attack from 3 different locations. Think of these locations as the left, the middle, and the right. Left and right are the most straightforward. You will have to listen for Garvey's laughter. This will give you a pretty clear indication of which side he's about to attack you from. At this point, you must open up the cameras. This is the part where I should mention that there's been a vent toggle button on the cameras this whole time. I never brought it up because it hasn't ever been important up until this point. After you pull up the camera and toggle the vents, you must click on the vent of the side Garvey is coming from. This will temporarily slow him down. At this time, you must very quickly run to the other side of the office and stare at the door he'll be coming from. Beating him to the door is key. You have to be staring at the door before Garvey peeks in, which can be challenging because you need to be fast. Like, really fucking fast. It will not feel remotely fair, but as you start to learn his speed, it will get slightly easier. Which, like, no fucking shit, that's how practice works. Insane that I have to explain to you how practicing works, and yet, here we are. Now, there will come a few times where you will hear his laughter in both of your ears. At this time, all you have to do is look straight up at the ceiling. You'll be able to see him staring back at you. Keep staring until he disappears, and you'll be good to continue. Honestly, the best part of this night is that you don't have to deal with Golden Call. God fucking damn, I hate that stupid ass animatronic bitch. But if you can manage to hunker down and deal with all of the garbage for long enough, you'll be able to beat Night 10. But what happens then? Well, a cutscene plays. At our desk, we will be able to see a heart on the table for some reason. As we're confused, wondering why it's there, Garvey shatters the window behind us and begins chasing us through the building. We get trapped near a door and enter one final spacebar mashing minigame. The screen cuts to black and we're shown a gravestone of a John Wright, stating brat, scum, waste of air. So, that might seem confusing to you. So I suppose it's time I explain a bit about the lore, huh? Bear with me, as this is not one of my strong suits. So that John Wright on the tombstone is us. We've been playing as John Wright, as is mentioned in the Night 1 phone call. A man by the name of Peter is the phone guy, and he's the one calling us throughout the nights. He claims he used to be a security guard at Freddy Fazbear's. On Night 1, Peter explains that we're dead and in a sort of purgatory, with several monsters roaming the buildings. And these monsters are supposedly our childhood friends. The reason why we're in a Freddy Fazbear's-like location is because our mind shapes the purgatory based off of the things we've seen, which could suggest we either worked at a Fazbear's location before, or at least have a strong tie to one. Peter says we can escape this purgatory, but he needs our help. He says to grab an audio tape that should be on the desk next to the fan. This is also where we learn that there is a tape that we need to collect on each night. All tapes, aside from the first, will appear randomly on one of the cameras, and I'll get into these tapes later. On Night 2, Peter explains his theories about why we're being hunted by the animatronics. He believes that someone or something tried to manifest these ghosts into physical bodies. That attempt clearly failed, which is why all of the characters look so fucked. Peter believes that because we are ghosts, we have a plasma of sorts that the animatronics need to survive, and that's why they're trying to eat us up like a gourmet steak. We don't get the next meaningful piece of information from Peter until Night 5, where he tells us that Golden Call is his own physical remains. That means we've identified one of the animatronics trying to attack us,
and we'll soon be able to find out who everyone else is as well, but we can cover that later. Peter tells us that the tapes we've been collecting are memories from our traumatic childhood. Peter mentions how an ominous key is also on these tapes, and I'm willing to bet that this key is Garvey. Peter thinks that collecting all of these tapes will allow our friends to move on and become regular ghosts, not being trapped in this purgatory with us anymore. On night 6, Peter explains to us that he has tapes too in his version of the purgatory, and that both his memories and ours are in one way or another tied to Freddy's locations. He says he missed a few of his tapes because you only get one attempt. The first 10 days in the purgatory decide your fate. Missing one tape is the difference between a chance at escape and spending eternity fending off your suffering dead friends stuck inside of robotic bodies. Peter begs us to collect the tapes and free everyone because he can't anymore. On night 7, Peter says the animatronic sleep cycles are all out of whack. He's been doing this for years while stuck here and was able to find a pattern with their sleep cycles. But out of nowhere, once we came here, those cycles started to change for some reason. Peter mentions he found a key and tried to use it on the exit door, but it didn't work. He says he'll update us as soon as he can. On night 8, we get some pretty crucial information. Peter has found another key, and he believes something may happen soon. He says we probably don't have any keys in our purgatory because he thinks the keys are linked to a specific trauma he suffered. He also thinks he knows why the animatronic sleep cycles are messed up. Apparently, we brought something into this world, and it's big, with loud footsteps causing the characters to wake up when they're not supposed to. Peter says that if this thing we brought in is what he thinks it is, that we're all sorts of fucked. And of course, knowing what we already know, we can take a pretty good guess at who that might be. Night 9 is where we get to hear Peter's final moments. The monster we let enter this world is exactly who Peter thought it was. Garvey. Garvey has been tearing all of the monsters in Peter's purgatory into pieces. Peter knows that we apparently know who Garvey is. He tells us he's hiding behind the curtains where Foxy is and that Garvey is coming for him. He tells us to get the keys, and the call ends. The 2 keys he's mentioned can be found. The first on night 10 in the same location where you find the tape on camera 5. The second key requires me to tell you about a night I have yet to mention, night 11, aka Nightmare. No matter how good you are at FNAF games, nothing will prepare you for just how surprisingly difficult this night really is. They cranked the AI for these characters on this night up to 10,000. Holy shit, it's insane. From 10 a.m. to 5 a.m., you go up against Havoc Freddy, Havoc Chica, Havoc Foxy, Havoc Puppet, Golden Call, The Boa, Soul Cage, and Molten Evil all at the same time. This has to be one of the most stressful challenges I've ever attempted. It is ridiculous. The sheer speed you have to even get close to beating this night is ridiculous. You quite literally have no time to rest for even a second. There is constantly something happening, and it's enough to give any grown adult a seizure and kill them instantly. But that's not even the worst part, no. The worst part comes at 5 a.m., when Garvey comes and kills everyone, and you're yet again thrown into a final, even more difficult Garvey boss fight for the last 2 hours of the night. If you thought he was quick before, boy, you better be Usain Bolt, because you need to be doubling your speed. It is insane how fast you really have to be if you want to be able to complete this night. But if you can manage to beat this night while grabbing the second key that's on camera 8, congrats! You're almost ready to achieve the good ending. There are a few prerequisites required to get the good ending. The first is getting the 2 keys. Check. The second is collecting all of the tapes. Check. The third is beating night 11. Check. The fourth is listening to the 10th tape. Come to think of it, we actually haven't dove into the tapes yet, so we'll do that now. But here's that warning I mentioned at the beginning of the video. The topics that take place in these tapes are highly disturbing and are one of the main reasons why this game is so controversial. Viewer discretion is heavily advised. The 10 tapes you collect throughout Dormitabus tell the story of Garvey Wright, John Wright's, our character's, brother. The tapes go over Garvey's plan to murder several children and stuff them into the suits in his father's establishment. There's another minigame you can play in Dormitabus called Cardboard Theater, where you play as Garvey and live out a few of the scenarios mentioned in these tapes. Not only did Garvey murder several children, he also murdered his brother Peter. Yes, the same Peter who was calling us throughout the game. In the cardboard theater, we get to watch the spring lock failure happen to Garvey before he has the chance to kill John and leave no witnesses. Garvey's father soon sells the Cake Bear establishments because of the controversy, and it gets bought and turned into what we now know as Freddy Fazbear's. John gets a job at the Fazbear Fright location from Five Nights at Freddy's 3 and goes head-to-head with his brother, who in this game's story basically took William Afton's place as Springtrap. And as you know if you've played FNAF 3, John burns the building down and kills himself as well. After his death is where Dormitabus takes place. By collecting the tapes, collecting the keys, and beating Cardboard Theater, John is able to send Garvey to hell while setting the rest of the spirits of his dead friends and brother free. Dexter, that sounds pretty normal for a FNAF-style game, I hear you saying. Why did you tell me that viewer discretion was advised? Well, that's because of the contents of Tape 3, and a specific news clipping that you see near the end of the game. In Cardboard Theater, you will need to recollect the 2 keys you collected before while playing. At the end of this minigame, Cake Bears will be unlocked, acting as the final 12th night of Dormitabus. The only 2 characters present in this night are Cake Bear and Havoc Puppet. I won't spend too much time explaining this night since you only ever have to beat it once. Cake Bear will move around the map and make it to your desk. You can stall him by lighting the candle on his cake, but I'm not sure if I'd actually do that because it drains power. Once he gets super close to your desk, quickly pull up the camera and he should go away. Havoc Puppet can appear randomly on any camera and will block your view. Since watching Cake Bear is essential, you'll want to get rid of the puppet. Simply staring at the puppet will cause it to go away, but sitting in the cameras will cause the battery to drain incredibly quickly, so it's best to wait until the battery is fully charged before dealing with him. If the battery goes dead, Havoc Puppet will disable it, which will lead to an inevitable death to Cake Bear. After beating Night 12, you'll be greeted to the FNAF 4 box. You must use the 2 keys you've collected to open it, and several news clippings will be given to you, each detailing the gruesome murders of some of the children at the hands of Garvey. But I'll cover them in just a moment. Back to the tapes. I referenced Tape 3 being the most alarming of all of them. Rather than explain it to you, I'll just play it.
My God! This is most certainly beginning to be fun. There's this hot 15-year-old that was part of the kids' friends group. You know, it was fun. She screamed, but nobody heard her. It was so much fun. She's in one of the suits now. Just a little more time until Fredbear's is going down as well. But hey, I'll find my ways to catch her at the others.
You may have a good idea as to what Garvey is referencing doing in this tape, but if you need any clarification, one of the news clippings will confirm your suspicions. It reads, "The Fredbear's establishment in town was recently closed because of an accident with the animatronical characters. The CEO is now selling the franchise just like the previous owner did. The dirt that has been shed onto the establishment increased even more, as the police found the remains of a 15-year-old female in the back of the establishment, stuffed into a suit. She was supposedly raped to death by a yet unknown killer. Connections to the incident at the previous establishment are already being drawn." This clipping right here, mixed with the excitement in the voice of Garvey in Tape 3, is the sole reason why this game is so hated and is so disgusting. Almost everybody agrees that throwing rape into this story was completely unnecessary. Some may argue that depraved people will do depraved things like this, and it's odd to not acknowledge that terrible things like this really happen. And to a point, I understand your thought process. But to feel the need to add it to a game that will most definitely be played by children with no prior warning is insane. And it gets even worse when you dive into the person who made the decision to put this into the story, Blackout. Blackout has since left the internet, but a while after Dormitabus released, one of the members of the Radiance team responsible for games such as Treasure Island and Five Nights at Chuck E. Cheese Rebooted posted an unlisted YouTube video going over Blackout's messages of harassment towards them. Soon after that video followed a Google document surfacing regarding Blackout's behavior, regarding joking about raping people, being hateful towards trans people, and a laundry list of other terrible things. But the most egregious thing that Blackout has done was the Discord messages that were released revealing him to have been grooming a 12-year-old girl, making jokes about Germany's lax age of consent laws,
and at one point even sending nudes to this child, this 12-year-old girl. After all of this unfolded, Blackout went on a hate brigade full of harassment and eventually left the internet, thanking his supporters that he for some reason thought he had. Now going to his Game Jolt page reads one message. Jesus Christ, just leave me be. I don't want to live in your heads rent-free. I've moved on, and you should as well. Bye. And with that, that's where the story of Dormitabus ends. A game that could have been something amazing, with a story that was really promising, soiled and ruined by a disgusting, perverted pedophile. Again, I encourage everyone to try their best to separate the art from the artist, but if you can't do that, then I'd recommend checking out the remake of Dormitabus that was made by some very talented creators if you're still interested in seeing what this game has to offer, minus all of the disgusting and unnecessary perversions. But let me know what you think. Taking out the disturbing lore and separating Blackout from it, what do you think about the gameplay of Dormitabus? Do you really like it, or do you feel like it's pretty lazy? I'm interested to hear what you all have to say. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Five Nights at Freddy's fanverse, and I'm sure you know of the questionable character that took part in it, but that's not what this video will be talking about. Maybe I'll cover that hot mess another day. Today, I want to tell you all about a creator from the Fanverse initiative that was forced to remove all of his FNAF-related projects, why, and most importantly, my favorite game that he made, which is now banned. To start, I want to clarify, because some of you may be wondering, how are you talking about this game, and how do you have gameplay of you playing it on your second channel, Dxtr Black, which everyone watching should definitely subscribe to if the game has been banned? Well, that's because people are awesome and have not only archived the game in question that I'll be talking about today, but all games that this creator was forced to remove. The game we'll be talking about today is the banned FNAF game, but also, hands down, one of the scariest FNAF fan games I've ever played, A Shadow Over Freddy's. Before we begin, I'd like to say that I don't make FNAF videos. I make horror game videos. I've just recently been finding so many FNAF games that I've been wanting to talk about. And I will be moving the question of the video winner to the end of the video to hopefully not interrupt and ruin people's experience of the video. Hope you understand, and let's go. A Shadow Over Freddy's begins with some dialogue explaining that we wake up in a dark room and that all we can hear is the low buzz of a metal fan. If you couldn't guess, this room in question is the office from Five Nights at Freddy's 1. Before saying, quote, "Leave immediately before the shadows that have devoured this abandoned building come to consume you as well." We're shown that we have 5 nights remaining, and now we're thrown into the main gameplay loop. A Shadow Over Freddy's is a semi-free roam game where you walk around the pizzeria from FNAF 1. Each night has a different task for you to complete, and as the nights go on, more and more threats are added for you to keep track of. Night 1's objective is simple: find the exit. This game is incredibly accurate to the building we see in Five Nights at Freddy's 1, minus 2 specific things. There's a break room for employees which is located right next to the back room, and an arcade area that's right next to the kitchen door. I guess you could make the argument that there were arcades in FNAF 1, since you really never got a good angle of that part of the pizzeria, but fuck you. I've never seen anyone else do it, so I'm gonna say it's not accurate to the original. Other than that, if you know the FNAF 1 location, you'll be able to move around the area quite easily. A moment ago I said that this game was semi-free roam. I say this because while yes, it is free roam, it's not free roam in the way that other free roam games are. You're still moving from screen to screen like you do in Sister Location, but there's no set path you're forced to take, and you can go wherever you'd like. You're equipped with a flashlight, and you'll very soon notice that the pizzeria is dark. Like, really fucking dark. Like the night. Like black. Like charcoal black. Batman black, some would even say. So, seeing isn't super easy. To move around, you just have to point your mouse at the area you want to go and click to advance to that area. Pretty simple. Where does the threat come in? There are 2 threats prevalent in Night 1, the clock and Freddy. The clock is pretty simple. Rather than having to survive until 6 AM like in most FNAF games, you only have until 6 AM to complete the task you have to complete. If it reaches 6 AM and you still haven't completed your task, the game is over. As each night goes on, the clock moves faster and faster. The other threat this night introduces is Freddy.
Freddy has the chance to appear in any room that you are in. When you see him in your room, you have to point your flashlight at him until he goes away. And this is when you'll notice that the animatronics in this game aren't really animatronics. Instead, they're shadows. Get it? Like a shadow over Freddy's? Like the name of the fucking game? Laugh. You better fucking laugh. Here's something I found interesting about Freddy, and two of the other animatronics in this game. Unlike most FNAF games where your reaction time needs to be on point, there's really no need for that in a Shadow over Freddy's. The animatronics don't care if you're standing right next to them for 10 years. Instead, if you move to another area of the map while Freddy was previously in the same spot you were, that's when he'll attack you. So now you start to understand why the clock will eventually become a huge problem. Because every time you enter a new area, which I promise you is very often, you'll have to do a full 360 moving your light up and down to make sure Freddy isn't in the room with you. And with how slowly you turn, I promise, the experience will not be very enjoyable. Another thing to note about Freddy, he's very quiet. Typically when I talk about FNAF games, I almost always mention the sound cues the characters have. But not Freddy. Freddy has no sound cue letting you know that he's in the same area as you, at least not from what I could tell. So you'll really have to give yourself terrible motion sickness as you crank 90s in every fucking square inch of the pizzeria. Now, the objective. Each night has a different one, and night 1's is just to find the exit of the establishment. If you know the FNAF 1 layout, you should know where to go. Go out of the hall, walk into the party room, walk to the opposite wall of where you entered, and go to the right corner of the room by the bathrooms, and there you'll find the exit door. Walk through, and notice that the exit has been boarded up. Shit. As you attempt to turn around to find a new exit, this happens. That right there, if you can't tell, is the marionette. Oh, lanky fuck. When you see the marionette in a Shadow over Freddy's, this is how you know you've successfully completed the objective of the night and will be moving on to the next one. But not before the puppet offers to tell you a story to clear your mind. I'm not going to explain the story to you. I think it'd be much better if you just experienced it for yourself. There once was a little kid who liked to play with his toys by his lonesome. He lived with his family in a small peaceful house outside of town surrounded by forestry. The home's backyard was his personal stage, where he played with his figurines of various shapes and sizes, making plays which were acted out for his enjoyment alone. Although he was alone, he was content in living out his youth playing with the plastic friends his parents had gifted him with. They were a small mannequin, a stuffed teddy bear, a porcelain dress-up doll, and a toy robot. But one day, the family's pet dog stole one of his toys during his playtime. Into the woods, he excitedly ran away with the toy robot, prompting the kid to chase after him to reclaim his friend. Annoyed by the dog's playful attitude, the kid caught up. Grabbing the toy from the thief's mouth, he began to pull. Oh, to be young and carefree. A kid and his dog playing tug-of-war in the back garden of their house with no one to interrupt them. Seems like a wonderful memory, doesn't it? The dog, excited to receive the attention it craved from the young master of the house, refused to lose this game they found themselves playing. The toy robot was almost free from the dog's mouth when... Relieved to have gotten his friend back, the kid wiped the pool of drool off the toy robot with the bottom of his shirt. He walked back home, leaving the animal twitching helplessly on the grass, with barely enough room left in its swollen neck to let out a pitiful, dry howl. The kid, arriving back out from the trees, positioned the toy robot back where it was on his makeshift stage and continued playing. Later that afternoon, the parents had found the body of the dog. They buried it where it stood. A brief overview. A young boy liked to create plays with his toys. One day, the family dog took a toy robot that the boy used and ran into the woods. The boy chased after the dog and began to fight for the toy back before eventually breaking the dog's neck to get his toy and leaving the dog writhing on the ground while the boy left it there to die. Already setting up a pretty fucked storyline. Goddamn. Can confirm my mind is not cleared, shithead. I do want you to keep that boy from the story in mind as it's very important for the rest of the game. After each night, the marionette will tell you a story, each story a continuation of the other, so you'll be hearing a lot more about this boy. Night's 2 objective is follow the music. On this night, you're introduced to a new mechanic, and a new threat is presented to you. Leaning is the new mechanic. Before moving to a new area of the pizzeria, you can hold right-click on an area to lean in and listen closely to the sounds of said area. Since it's so dark, seeing in front of you, even with a flashlight, is quite literally impossible. So leaning is what you'll have to use to make sure you don't bump into any threats. Which leads me to my next talking point. The threat introduced in Night 2. Bonnie. Bonnie works pretty interestingly. Bonnie will patrol the perimeter of the pizzeria, meaning that if you stay towards the center and never follow a wall, Bonnie will never be an issue for you. But then of course, you also have to bring up the fact that since you can't see very well at all, when you're in the center of the party room, every single area looks exactly the same, with only small differences in the party tables to let you know your position. It will become incredibly easy to get turned around and lose your position in the mental map you've been building. But how do you deal with Bonnie, you might be asking? Well, I don't know why you're asking. You're watching a video, not a live stream, so I can't answer questions live. You're just lucky enough that I happened to predict that you'd ask that, so let me explain it to you. Unlike Freddy, Bonnie has sound cues. Just like Freddy, there's a small chance that he'll spawn in the same area of the building that you are in which case you'll have to shine your flashlight at him to make him go away. If he's in the same area as you when you attempt to leave, same thing as Freddy, he'll kill you. I will say that him appearing in the same area as you is, from what I could tell, pretty low. Instead, you should be more afraid of walking directly into him. This is where leaning comes in handy. Before moving to a new area of the pizzeria, you'll need to lean into that area and listen for Bonnie's sound cue, which just sounds like he has asthma. If you hear Bonnie in one area of the pizzeria that you were going to move into, don't dipshit. Instead, maneuver your way around him. This, entwined with Freddy's checking and the clock progressively getting faster and faster as the nights go on, really start to add to the stress. You enter a new area, do your full 360 checking for Freddy. No Freddy? Awesome. Let's go west. Lean and listen for about 3 seconds. Fuck. Bonnie's there. That's the direction I wanted to go. Alright, let's go north instead. Alright, since I needed to head west, I'll try to go west again. Lean and listen. God damn it. Bonnie moved north as well. Now I have to move back down, and this can repeat multiple times, and time is not on your side. Now to talk about the objective of Night 2, follow the music. It's really in place to teach you about leaning more than anything, as I failed to come up with any sort of lore implication as to why music would be playing, aside from the fact that you see the marionette at the end of each night. So when you lean into a new area, you'll most likely hear faint music playing. In most cases, there will be at least 3 areas you can always move to. You'll check each direction and listen for which way the music is the loudest. Whichever way is the loudest, that's which direction you'll go. The music leads you to 4 locations. First it leads you to the stage, then it leads you to the bathrooms, then Pirate's Cove, and finally the back room, wherein you see the marionette again, ending the night. Again, it's not a super difficult night, really just preparing you for what's to come. Before moving on to Night 3, the marionette offers to tell us another story. This story I tell you is a true story I pray you never forget. There once was a boy who laid awake at night during a harsh downpour. Beneath the covers of his bed, he closed his eyes and tried to ignore the storm just outside his room. Enveloped in darkness, a sensation of creeping discomfort kept him from falling asleep. The roars of the storm were nothing compared to the restlessness that the shadows cast from the window gave him. He felt eyes watching him from afar. The boy opened his eyes and looked towards the window, but nothing was there. He tried to go back to sleep. He opened his eyes again, and out of the corner of his eye he spotted it. The hollow, white eyes of a living shadow. It appeared just as quickly as it went away, his uneasiness pushed aside by growing curiosity. The boy got up from his bed and approached the window. From out the glass he could see it, the silhouette of an animal, darker than the night around it and void of color even when light struck its frame, running off into the trees with a familiar object stuck in its mouth. His favorite toy, stolen again, being carried towards the forest. The boy couldn't help but follow along the shadow's path. The night air was freezing, brazen winds carrying countless droplets that hit the skin like marbles, their impact deafening any other sound other than the imposing thunder. Call it premonition, but he knew where the shadow had gone to. That place at the edge of the forest where he had last left the family dog. He was sure he would find it, Standing in front of the grave once more, the eyes from the shadow had gone away. In its stead, the twice stolen toy now lay on top of the muddy mount, but this time it was moving. Its tiny plastic arms flailing violently from side to side, its head rotating in place. The movements were sudden but clear. Unprompted by any outside influence, a spark of life was trapped inside this tiny vessel. Fascinated by such a discovery, he picked up the toy from the ground and held it tightly with both hands to prevent it from escaping his grasp. Smiling from ear to ear, the boy headed back home. Sick. So the boy saw the shadow of his dog in the window of his bedroom holding his toy again. He went out to the grave where the dog was buried and found the toy again, only to notice that it was moving on its own. So the dog possessed the toy robot. Interesting. We'll keep that in the back of our minds. Now let's move on to night 3's objective, enter the kitchen. If it wasn't obvious, all you have to do in this night is find a way into the kitchen. But of course, as I bet you suspected, a new threat is introduced, and judging by the theme of the night, I'm betting you can guess who it is. Chica. Chica's mechanic is incredibly similar to Bonnie's. Rather than patrolling the perimeter of the building, Chica instead patrols the center. So no matter where you are in the building, you're always at a risk of bumping into an animatronic. The way you can tell if Chica is in front of you is the same as Bonnie. Just lean into the area and listen for Chica's sound cue, which you'll be able to tell is notably different from Bonnie's. There's only one other small difference between Bonnie and Chica. If you stay in one area for too long, Chica will just walk into the same area as you, and if you don't flash her before moving to another area, it's game over. Now, I have a theory. I think originally Chica was meant to be the exact same as Bonnie, except she patrols the middle of the map, but FizzNom added the moving mechanic to prevent a soft lock that can easily happen. Let me tell you about it. So, I should say that Bonnie and Chica can go anywhere in the building. It's just much more common for them to patrol their previously stated areas. And because of this, if you're in one of two specific areas, those two being the stage and Pirate's Cove, you might notice something interesting. There's only two directions you can possibly move in, and there's a pretty common chance that both Bonnie and Chica will be in both of these areas that you can move to, and that you would literally be unable to move without dying, since the animatronics only move when you move. So, I believe that Chica's movement mechanic was added specifically so that if you were to get stuck in a situation like that, you could stand in place and wait for Chica to move into your area, flash her, and then move to the area that she was previously in. Doesn't sound too hard, and it isn't, but this brings up another mechanic in this game that I've failed to mention thus far. In A Shadow Over Freddy's, there's this super epic, radical, and cool mechanic where if you stay in one area for a prolonged period of time, the clock will actually begin to move faster the longer you stay in an area. So constantly moving is the best way to slow the clock down. But of course, as I just mentioned, there's a chance that Bonnie and Chica will body block you all seductive-like, licking their lips and shit, and make you wait upwards of 10 seconds for Chica to move to your area. And 10 seconds is enough to make the clock speed up dramatically. So here's the tip. Unless you absolutely have to, try to avoid going on stage and to Pirate's Cove. Now for the objective, entering the kitchen. You'll notice that if you just try to go to the kitchen and open the door that you can't. However, you may also notice that a key outline has appeared at the bottom of your screen. This is to let you know that there is an item you need to pick up, in this night obviously being a key. This key is located in the break room that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. Once you make it there, you grab the key off a key rack and make your way back to the kitchen, where you can then unlock the door and go inside, where you'll find the marionette yet again, ending the night. But before we can move on to night 4, we have to listen to another story, so buckle up, grab some warm milk and a banky, and let's listen to this shit. There once was a young man who had grown hungry for knowledge. Growing into adolescence, he had isolated himself from his family, focusing instead on his passion for the unknown, the spiritual, the place of mystery he had come to know years ago. In a box under his bed, he hid his secret away from all others, his living plastic friend, still thrashing and writhing inside. Every night he observed his movements intently. The young man spent entire days away from home, reading and studying about spirits and vessels. His interest turned into obsession, and his need to understand grew. Alas, it was all for naught, as no book had the key to the answers he'd been seeking. All he found were vague rumors and legends with no instructions or explanations. Since he was a kid, the young man never saw his dad as anything more than an obstacle. He was a moody, aggressive old alcoholic who only talked to his son when he needed something to shout at. Having driven everyone that loved him away, the drunkard was worth less than nothing in the eyes of the boy. Thus, he was the perfect candidate. One day, when coming home, seeing the old man sprawled out onto the kitchen table with a bottle in hand, he decided to show dear old daddy a new way of life. Holding a small felt doll in his right hand, the teen made his way to the house's garage. After a few hours, the deed was done and the plan in action. The boy watched his oblivious father drive away in his car, unaware of the tampering that had been done to the vehicle. Sitting on his bed, the young man took his dear pet out of the box and began to press harshly on its square plastic head. As it trembled in pain, he waited on the outcome of his small experiment. Oh, the humanity. After a car accident, he recovered the doll that had been planted below the seat and returned to his home. Placing it on his desk, he watched it closely for that same spark that remained inside his robotic friend. But much to his frustration, no movement came from the doll. Nothing. The vessel he had prepared for his father was empty, devoid of even a single remnant of life. Furious by his failure, he ripped the felt doll apart and threw it aside. What a waste. From then on, he was free of the shackles of his drunken caretaker, but without the trophy he had planned to take from his monstrous act of sabotage. Unflinching in his resolve and with no guilt in his empty heart, he contemplated what to do next. He killed his dad. Holy shit. How does a child know how to cut the brakes to a car? Beyond me. But let's move on to Night 4. Night 4 has the objective of find the pieces, and this is, in my opinion, the most difficult night in the whole game. But that might also be because it took me an embarrassingly long time to complete, and because of the addition of the final threat this game has to offer, Foxy. Foxy is a bitch. He's such a bitch. Let me tell you about this fuckhead. I personally never died to him, but that's because I was so paranoid about him, I made sure to keep him in complete check. Foxy, as I'm sure you could have guessed, is in Pirate's Cove. As the night goes on, you'll have to continuously go and check on him by pulling open his curtain and flashing your light at him. Thankfully, once he gets close to coming out, he plays a sound cue letting you know to get your silly ass over there and check on him. But holy shit, with how slow movement between areas is, having to check for Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica if you're on the other side of the map as Foxy as he plays his song, the spastic mad dash you have to make to the other side of the building is enough to send you into cardiac arrest, I swear to God. But for the objective, collecting the pieces. Scattered throughout the pizzeria are 5 pieces to a golden Freddy plushie. You have to move around the pizzeria and find them all, which can be pretty fucking hard. Even though they're pretty big, there were 2 I looked right at but didn't see. That's probably because the whole game is totally black and white, so making things out is obviously harder than it usually would be. You have to collect 2 legs, 2 arms, and a head. You might be wondering about the body. Don't worry, we'll get to that later. The limb locations are as follows: in the kitchen, on the stage, in the back room, and on the table next to Pirate's Cove. The head can be found in the exit area from Night 1. Thankfully, there's no specific order you have to grab them in. So, my first thought was to immediately go to the kitchen, then the exit room, then walk across the stage, and then hit the back room before quickly booking it back to Foxy to check on him and pick up the last limb, since I fully believe that is possible to do before Foxy gets out. But Foxy isn't the biggest issue in this night. No, the biggest issue in every night is Bonnie and Chica, those fuckers. Freddy, in all honesty, throughout my playthrough, barely showed up at all, which I appreciated. But Bonnie and Chica, oh my god, it's like they were fucking scheming between nights. They knew my path each time. Oh, he wants to go to the exit room? Well, let's go right in front of it and to the side of it so that he has to backtrack 2 rooms to be able to try and get to the exit from another angle. But once he backtracks a room, let's body block him so that he has to backtrack 2 more rooms. Fuck him, right? Oh no, now he spent too much time dealing with us fuckers that Foxy's about to bust all over his face. So now he's got to get to Foxy before continuing. You want to know what would be drop shit fucking hilarious? If we body blocked him every fucking room on the way there. Fucking rolling on the floor laughing ass animatronics. Fuck. So needless to say, I never got to put my perfect plan into action, and I spent most of the night going from one side of the building to the other. This is why this night is so hard. But once you've got all the pieces, we get to listen to another story. There once was a sick, twisted monster who stalked its victims from the shadows. Its heart far gone from its body, the putrid, parasitic individual lived for the hunt, to capture and corrupt the weak, all for the sake of satisfying its disgusting pleasures. Tonight was no different. Amidst the rain, this vile vampire of society spotted a young girl, left outside the entrance to a family restaurant. She looked in from a window as the other kids inside had fun and celebrated without her. The monster approached the girl from behind, its body trembling in anticipation to savor the perfect opportunity that had been laid out in front of it. Maybe, if some humanity was still lingering inside, if some shred of dignity had remained in its hollow heart, it would have felt pity for her. Maybe it could have sympathized with her situation. It stood still, inches away from her, its hands reaching out for her back, the sound of its breathing masked by the downpour surrounding them. The child felt a chill run down her spine. She saw its eyes looking at her in the reflection of the glass. She slowly turned around to face the figure towering over her. You rotten, ignorant, heartless creature. You left that innocent girl in that alley to die a cold, lonesome death. Your hands were tinted red with her blood, colorless in your empty eyes, and you felt nothing but satisfaction from taking her life. And for what? You don't remember? We all know that's not true. These meetings have been merely a formality. If it were up to me, I would have left you alone to be torn apart by your captors, limb by limb, just like you tore the life away from her that night, tossing her into the trash after capturing the fragments of her presence. But now it's time for you to feel her pain, to feel the pain that all your victims suffered. Rotten hell, William Afton, alongside the shadows of your past. That's right. If you hadn't put the pieces together already, we're playing as William Afton, and the story that's been being told is William's childhood, and what led him to becoming the man he became. I think that this reveal is fucking brilliant. I absolutely love it. I think this is something that Five Nights at Freddy's should have done. You never learn why William is the way he is. You're just meant to accept that he's a murderer, which is never the case with actual murderers. I'm aware he had a reason as to why he murdered the kids, but normal people don't murder, period. You can always go back in their past and pick up on small hints that something isn't right in their development, and in a lot of cases, harming animals is one of the earliest signs. Look at Jeffrey Dahmer. He mutilated animals in the woods to study their insides. Giving Afton this bit of story, while generally simple, provides so much more meaning behind the actions that he made in the main games, and I really hope the new FNAF game Into the Pit does something like this. I love it. But now, we get to move on to the final night of this game. No, there's no sixth night. This is it. Night 5, with the most simple objective of all. Run. This night is batshit insane. Not only is there way more static on screen, there's also finally some color, albeit only red. This night makes every animatronic the most aggressive it's ever been, aside from Foxy, who isn't active at all, but that's for good reason. Every location you move to sends you to a completely random area of the pizzeria. You'd think to run to the exit, but the moment you step out of your office, you're teleported to a totally random area. And maybe you eventually find the exit, but as you run through the doors, you realize you get teleported back onto the other side of the pizzeria. And if you thought the clock was moving quickly on previous nights, you're not ready for how quickly that shit goes down in night 5. In order to win, you have to randomly teleport through rooms for long enough that you eventually get teleported inside the bathroom, which only has one exit. Once you leave the bathroom through that one exit is when you finally get teleported back to the office and win. But holy fucking shit, I have stuff to complain about before we get that far. Let me start by completely disregarding Freddy. He might as well not even be in this game with how infrequently he appears. but holy shit, Bonnie and Chica make me want to stick my dick in a toaster. Holy God. It does not matter how quick you are. I think I established the fastest possible strategy for optimally doing 360s and checking rooms that you can possibly have in this game. But it doesn't matter how fast you are. There's one enormous factor of luck that you can't overlook. Pirate's Cove and the stage. Remember the Bonnie and Chica body blocking I mentioned earlier with these two areas? Yeah, those two areas are choke points of this night. And the worst part? There's nothing you can do about it because every location is randomized. There's no pattern to map out in your head because every time you teleport, the entrances and exits get randomized again. Generally speaking, you have two shitty teleports that you can go through, and that's considering you've run into rooms where the first area you lean into doesn't have Bonnie or Chica in it. If you've had to check 3 locations before transferring to one of the rooms you've been in, which I promise you happens very often, then you really only have one shitty teleport that you can fall into safely. Why? Because again, the longer you stay in one area, the faster the clock moves. If you end up getting teleported to the stage or Pirate's Cove, there's a non-zero chance that Chica will take her sweet fucking time entering your area, almost guaranteeing that if you get sent to a shit area, that 1 hour is almost 100% going to pass while waiting. That's just how fucking fast the clock is on this night. If you get sent to the stage twice, you might as well just reset the game because there's no chance you'll transfer through enough rooms after that before it hits 6 a.m. Oh my fuck, then I still have to talk about the music. As you transfer through areas, you'll begin to hear music playing softly, but as you transfer through more rooms, the music gets louder and louder, making it fucking impossible to hear Bonnie, and I mean Bonnie specifically. Chica tends to be pretty fucking loud so you can figure out where she is pretty quick, but Bonnie's sound cue is so quiet most of the time that every time you end up leaning, you'll have to wait a good 3 seconds to make sure you don't hear him, and I cannot stress enough how much time 3 seconds is on this night when the clock moves at fucking Mach 40. So by the time it's 5 a.m. you're almost done. The music is blaring in your ears so goddamn loud you think your eardrum might fucking rupture. Your leg is bouncing so fast and your heart is pounding so hard you can feel it throughout your whole torso. And you can hear it echoing throughout your skull, making it more and more difficult to focus on listening for Bonnie's sound cue. When finally you realize you've entered the bathroom as fast as you can, you whip around to the exit of the bathroom and you find yourself in the office. All has gone quiet. The red tint has gone away. It's calm. For once. For once, you stop shaking. You take a deep exhale that you've been holding in for the last minute, and your heart rate decreases. As you look around the room you're in, you'll realize the torso of the plushie you collected pieces to on night 4 laid on the desk in front of you. You don't know why you've been collecting the pieces. You just know that it's something that you've had to do. You grab the final piece, and then That's the ending of A Shadow Over Freddy's. I've said games were masterpieces before, but this one has to take the cake. The gameplay was never overwhelmingly difficult, and it was overall a simple concept, but this game shows you that the only thing that matters in game design is execution, and this game knocked that out of the park tenfold. This is by far my favorite FNAF fan game I've ever played up until this point. The moment I saw the Afton reveal, I just knew I had to make a video about it. I couldn't keep myself from telling anyone about it, and I thank you greatly for making it this far. But I still have some more to talk about, so if you're interested, I urge you to stick around a little bit longer. You might notice on a first playthrough that upon beating Night 5, you're greeted to a screen of the plushie you built with text telling you that something is missing. And this is the part where I tell you that there's been smaller objectives I've failed to talk about thus far. The plushies of the other animatronics. Each night has a different plushie that you can find. Whichever character is introduced on a night, that's which plushie you'll have to find. Night 1 is obviously Freddy, as he's the only one who's active. You can find his plushie on the stage. On Night 2, you can find Bonnie's plushie in the storage closet in the hall. Night 3, you can find Chica's plushie in the right hall. And on Night 4, you can find Foxy's plushie in the break room. Once you've collected all of them, you'll unlock Custom Night. I personally didn't play it, but you can obviously set the main 4's AI value from 0 to 20, and you can also select up to 5 plushies you collected throughout the main game to go collect. I can only imagine that the night consists of you going to the areas you found the plushies before and collecting all of them again to finish the night while dealing with all the animatronics at the same time like in Night 4. A super simple but nice addition to an already amazing game. I also mentioned that I thought Night 4 was more difficult than Night 5. Here's my reasoning for that. Mainly because of Foxy and the fact that you don't have to worry about where you're going. Removing Foxy from Night 5 was obviously the right decision to make, because if you didn't, the night would literally be impossible because of how random it is. But you also have to take into account that in Night 4, there are very specific areas you have to go to, and that makes Bonnie and Chica body blocking you matter way more than in Night 5, as if they body block you in Night 4, you have to actively maneuver your way around them to get to where you need to go. In Night 5, it doesn't matter where you go, as long as you go. Generally, I think Night 5 is a better night than Night 4, just because of the run objective and how sporadic it feels, really setting the fact that you are panicked and you have nowhere to run. But Night 5 is in no way more difficult than Night 4, just more luck dependent. And the last thing I have to talk about, why was a game like this, a game that seems so perfect, forced to be taken down? Well, as mentioned, FizzNom was invited to be part of the Fanverse initiative by Scott Cawthon, and he accepted. He was the one who started work on the infamous Five Nights at Freddy's Plus. However, during the work on that game, he decided he wanted to spend time on himself and his mental health and stepped away from the Fanverse, leaving it entirely, which is why FNAF Plus was never released. And because of the contract that he signed, he was forced to remove all of his Five Nights at Freddy's fan games he's ever made, even games he made while not in the Fanverse, one of those games being A Shadow Over Freddy's. I have no idea the terms of the contract, and I can't see why they'd have him remove games he's made, but regardless, that's what happened and where we're at now. And if you want to know, FizzNom is still active just on YouTube with his channel where he makes some pretty good videos, so I recommend you go check that out. I'll link him in the description. But thankfully, people have archived the amazing projects he has put together. But that was A Shadow Over Freddy's. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Before I go, in the last video I asked you all what your favorite memory from the Joy of Creation story mode was, and my favorite answer was this one by Joker of Spades. They chose the third night simply because it's funny that Bonnie punches the camera. Not a super detailed reason, but it was enough to make me laugh. The question of this video is, what's your favorite main series FNAF animatronic and why? With the question being asked, I've been Dxtr, and I'll see you all in the next video. See ya!